Chapter 205. Seeing that the level 10 super mutant beasts were knocked out, the sea dragon clone immediately swam over. At this moment, cracking sounds came from its body. Its muscles were also wriggling quickly. A moment later, it turned into a 130-meter-long behemoth. It opened its mouth and pounced on the level 10 super mutant beasts. The super mutant beasts hurriedly tried to escape, but their heads hurt from the sonic attack just now and they completely lost their sense of direction. Also, Emosure released the natural pressure of a wild beast, suppressing many of the super mutant beasts so much that they didn't even dare to move. They could only let it devour them. In just half an hour, it devoured more than a dozen super mutant beasts here. Emosure clearly felt that the energy in the cells in his body had increased a lot. And this was only the outside of the nest. Inside the nest, the entire trench was a huge blood river that was 1,000 kilometers long. In this blood river, there were thousands of level 10 super mutant beasts. Emosure was overjoyed. If it devoured these level 10 super mutant beasts, the sea dragon clone should level up. Soon, he swayed his body and entered the blood river in the trench. As soon as he entered the blood river, countless thick sanguisurincus stretched out toward Emosure like blood-red pythons. Emosure's long way spread out. These sanguisurincus immediately crouched at the bottom of the sea, not daring to move at all. Then Emosure used the sonic attack again. These level 10 super mutant beasts once again felt a sharp pain in their heads. They rolled and struggled in pain. Emosure controlled the sea dragon clone to open its huge mouth and devour them. The energy in the sea dragon clone's body kept increasing crazily. But at this moment, Emosure discovered that the sanguisurincus around the nest, when they realized that they couldn't attack him, began to rapidly divide into thousands of tiny sanguisurincus. These sanguisurincus quickly interweaved above the trench. Then, a small sarcoma continued to grow on the sanguisurincus. At first, the tumor was only the size of a fist. But soon, like a balloon, it grew bigger and bigger. In the end, it once again formed a giant sarcoma with a diameter of 50 meters. Then, the second, third, and fourth sarcomas were formed. It was obvious that the nest was repairing itself. Emosure took a deep breath. It seemed that the sonic attack was still inferior to his dragon wool meteorite. If the draconic meteor came crashing down, the broodmother wouldn't have a chance to recover. He immediately controlled the sea dragon clone and opened its mouth. Boom! A fiery red energy shot out. This fiery red energy looked like fire, but it also didn't seem to be fire. That was because it could burn at the bottom of the sea. The surrounding sanguisurincus instantly shriveled up upon contact with the energy. In the next moment, they were all reduced to ashes. Then, the energy was sprayed onto the sarcoma above. When the sarcomas encountered this energy, they were like plastic being burned by flames, constantly melting into small black blood balls. In the end, it also disappeared. Then, this energy sprayed towards the blood river below. The blood water in the entire blood pool seemed to evaporate in the face of this violent energy and kept decreasing. This time, the sarcoma above the broodmother never recovered. This was the first time the sea dragon clone had used energy. It was also the first time Emosure had seen an energy attack. Although the cells of Earth's creatures were extremely strong and could store energy. But they didn't have energy in their bodies. In other words, even if there was energy, it was all converted into the nutrients they needed to grow. Only by surpassing the restrictions of Earth and reaching the level of a desolate beast or a hunter could they release an energy attack. And the power of an energy attack was extremely fierce and domineering. Even Emosure wouldn't be able to withstand this energy attack. And ordinary desolate beasts, although they had energy in their bodies, couldn't not release it. This was because energy attacks consumed a lot of energy. The energy in their bodies would soon be exhausted. But at this moment, the sea dragon clone didn't have this concern. Because every time it released an energy attack, it would devour a few level 10 mutated beasts. The energy obtained from devouring level 10 mutated beasts could completely replenish the energy he used to release an energy attack. And while constantly releasing energy attacks, he found that the blood vessels and cells in the sea dragon clone's body had become much stronger after constant cleansing. It turned out that desolate beasts could quickly become stronger in this way. However, there were powerful desolate beasts and even stronger mutated desolate beasts everywhere on the flaming origin continent. So ordinary desolate beasts didn't dare to release energy attacks casually. Instead, they used energy attacks as a life-saving trump card. So although they knew that constantly releasing energy attacks could quickly become stronger, they didn't dare to release them casually. But at this moment, the sea dragon clone didn't have this concern. After all, it was now the strongest on Earth. Even if it didn't have a trace of energy in its body, no creature could be its match. Just like this, Emosure controlled the sea dragon clone to continuously devour level 10 mutated beasts and release energy. It took 3 full days to destroy half of the broodmother nest in the East Sea Trench. At the same time, it also devoured half of the level 10 mutated beasts here. And the cells and blood vessels in the sea dragon clone's body, after being constantly cleansed and strengthened by energy, finally reached their limits. Emosure felt a faint pain of his muscles being torn apart in his body. He immediately switched his consciousness back to his main body. It was still the same saying, if there's trouble, let's enjoy it together. It was currently afternoon. Happy was knocking on the door. Emosure got out of bed and opened the door. A ray of sunset fell into the room from outside the door. Outside the door, Happy's silhouette was outlined by the sunlight with a golden edge. Her originally black hair seemed to have turned golden in the setting sun. There was some concern in her beautiful eyes. Obviously, she saw that Emosure had been staying in the room for the past few days and didn't go out much. So she was a little worried. Emosure reached out to rub Happy's head and smiled. "Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just tired from running around outside a few days ago, so I slept a little longer." When Happy saw that Emosure was truly fine, he felt at ease. But she still took Emosure's hand and pointed at the setting sun in the sky. Emosure understood what she meant and said, "Okay, let's go out for a walk." Therefore, the two of them walked out of the corpse farm under the sunset. They took a walk in the base. Now, in the base, everyone's face was filled with hope. In the first 30 years after the apocalypse, no one in the base had any hope on their faces. Because they couldn't see any hope in the first place. There were infected creatures everywhere, and the city wall might be breached at any time. Until now, Emosure's strength had brought too many changes to the base. Hope finally appeared on people's faces, and some smiles also appeared. Chapter 206. 2/3 of the people in the base were already zombie hunters or psychokinesis. The remaining 1/3 were also full of hope. Mr. Emo had said that as long as they trained hard, everyone could become a zombie hunter or psychokinesis. When they were strong, there were no infected creatures outside the city walls. They could expand their range of activity. They reclaimed a large area of land outside the city walls to plant wheat, corn, and other crops. They even had the leisure to cultivate an orchard to plant apple trees. It was estimated that in half a year, the people in the base would solve the most basic food problem. They wouldn't have to eat porridge and steamed buns every meal. After 3 years, they could often eat meat and even fruit. And all of this was thanks to Mr. Emo. So when the people on the roads saw Emosure, they weren't as afraid as before. Some of the bolder ones even often greeted Emosure. Walking with Emosure like this, Happy's face often brimmed with a happy smile. Her smile was very infectious, and when the passers-by saw her smile, they all smiled knowingly. When Emosure was with Happy, he felt that he was also much happier. When it was getting late, Emosure and Happy returned to the corpse farm. Emosure lay on the recliner on Grape Trellis 5, looked at the starry sky, and slowly closed his eyes. Happy thought that Emosure was asleep, so she brought a blanket and covered Emosure. At this time, Emosure's consciousness had already arrived in the body of the sea dragon clone in the East Sea Trench. At this time, the sea dragon clone's body length hadn't changed at all. But when Emosher checked its attributes, he found that it had leveled up. Species, Sea Dragon, Level 4 Dire Beast, Ability, Evolution by Devouring, Dragon Psychic Attack, Soundwave Attack. Emosher thought that after becoming a level 3 Dire Beast, it would take a long time for it to level up again. He didn't expect it to level up after devouring half of the mutant beasts in the mother nest. There were 27 other underwater mother nests in the world. If it devoured all of them, it would at least be level 7. Next, it took more than half a day for the Sea Dragon clone to devour all the mutant beasts in the East Sea Trench and destroy the entire nest. Only then did Emosher sign in at the seabed broodmother's nest. System, sign in. The system replied instantly, just like any other time. Sign in successful. Sign in location, East Sea Trench Mother Nest. Sign in reward, Million Sanguisurincus, Acid Breath. Both of them were skills for the Sea Dragon's clone. It was clear that when Emosher's consciousness was inside the Sea Dragon clone, most of his skills could be used by the Sea Dragon clone. But when his consciousness wasn't in the body of the Sea Dragon clone, the clone could only use a few skills such as Devouring Evolution and Dragon Will attacks. Now that he could sign in Myriad Sanguisurincus and Strong Acid Breath, it could be considered as giving the Sea Dragon avatar 2 more trump cards. After leaving the East Sea Trench that had been cleaned up, Emosher swayed his body and wandered around the seabed. The Sea Dragon clone, a level 4 wild beast, was definitely an invincible existence at the bottom of the sea. Any mutated beast that encountered it could only escape. However, when these mutated beasts wanted to escape, the cells on the Sea Dragon clone's body would quickly squirm. It shot out a Sanguisurincus. This Sanguisurincus would instantly pierce into the mutated beast's body and grow barbs. This way, the mutated beast wouldn't even have time to escape. The Sanguisurincus would drag the mutated beast over so that the Sea Dragon clone could enjoy it in peace. This was the magical effect of the Million Sanguisurincus. Not only could this Sanguisurincus shoot out hundreds of them at the same time, but it could also penetrate the defense of any wild beast below level 4. As for this Strong Acid Breath, it was even more powerful. The Sea Dragon clone could spit out strong acid. This kind of strong acid could only be withstood by the Sea Dragon clone's oral mucosa and acid bag mucosa. In front of this strong acid, anything else could only be quickly corroded. Even rocks were corroded to the point of being riddled with holes. Next, Emosher controlled the Sea Dragon clone and continued to go to other trenches. In each trench mother nest, there were at least 1,500 level 10 super mutated beasts. The Sea Dragon clone didn't let go of any level 10 super mutated beast. While devouring these super mutated beasts, the Sea Dragon clone's level was slowly increasing. At the same time, after more than 40 days of check-in, Emosher finally reached level 10 Great Hunter. After becoming a level 10 Great Hunter and taking the modification liquid for a few days, his body finally reached its limit. No matter how much modification liquid he took, it would be directly expelled from his body. It seemed that he would have to wait for the right opportunity to break through again. So for the next few days, Emosher focused on the Sea Dragon clone. After more than 40 days of devouring, the Sea Dragon clone had devoured half of the trench mother nests. It had now grown into a level 5 wild beast. The Sea Dragon clone, a level 5 wild beast, was quite terrifying in the sea. It could reach more than 50 meters per second. At this speed, devouring the remaining 14 trench mother nests would definitely be much faster than before. Emosher planned to go to the Bermuda Triangle to look for the underwater dragon ruins after devouring all the trench mother nests. At the same time, on the flaming land. For tens of thousands of years, countless hunting grounds had been built on the entire continent. The entrance to each hunting ground was built on an island. On the first hunting island corresponding to the first hunting ground. In a huge factory, in the corridor on the second floor. A middle-aged man in his 50s was holding the railing, looking at the zombies in the cages below howling and roaring at him. He was the owner of the first hunting ground. At this time, a middle-aged woman also in her 50s walked over. There was a hint of uneasiness between the woman's eyebrows. She said, "My son has been in the first hunting ground for more than a month and hasn't replied to any news. I tried to contact him with the interstellar communicator just now, but I couldn't reach him." The owner didn't turn around and continued to look at the zombies in the cages. He said, "Don't worry, as a level 10 great hunter, he is the strongest existence in the first hunting ground. Nothing in the first hunting ground can hurt him. Moreover, didn't you send a level 5 psychic to protect him?" The woman was slightly stunned, then laughed softly and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't ask for your permission and sent a level 5 psychic." The owner shook his head. "I've said it before, he's not young anymore. There are many things he should learn to solve by himself. It's just the first hunting ground. With his strength, it's more than enough to deal with the creatures there." A hint of worry appeared between the woman's eyebrows. "But why can't I reach him through the interstellar communicator? Why don't we send someone to check it out?" The owner thought for a moment and said, "I'll send a few people to check it out." The woman quickly nodded. "Yes, that's best." Chapter 207. On this day, Emosher controlled the sea dragon avatar and finished devouring another trench mother nest. His next goal was to kill 2 people. One was the deepest trench in the world, the Mariana Trench mother nest. The other was the Bermuda Devil Delta in the Atlantic Ocean. However, on this day, there were guests from outer space at the South Pole's blood-colored waterfall. South Pole, Death Valley, above the blood-colored waterfall. 10 balls of light slowly descended. These 10 blue-white balls of light were very blurry at first. Gradually, they became more and more solid. In the end, they condensed into 10 human forms. At this moment, Emosher's virus avatar saw the sudden appearance of these 10 people. He quickly reported to Emosher in his mind. One of those people saw Emosher's virus avatar and didn't care at all. The mechanical arm on his right hand instantly popped out. It grabbed at the virus avatar's neck. It was so fast that the virus avatar couldn't resist at all. The mechanical arm exerted force. Crack! The virus avatar's head was directly twisted off. However, the virus avatar was formed by the virus. Even if its head was cut off, it could still be formed again. Seeing this, those people were slightly surprised. "Not human," a young man said as his telekinesis instantly spread out. As a level 5 psychic master, his telekinesis could kill all viruses and cells at the molecular level. When his telekinesis continuously attacked the virus and cells of the virus avatar could no longer heal. A moment later, the virus avatar turned into a pool of blood. The young man reached out and rubbed his nose. "A mere level 5 great hunter. Boring." Then, he said to the middle-aged man in the lead. "The hunting ground master is making a mountain out of a molehill. In a broken place like the first hunting ground, any level 1 hunter can sweep through and crush everything. There are actually so many people here. A level 3 hunter, 8 level 1 hunters, plus a level 5 psychic master and me, a level 3 psychic master." Another young man also laughed. "Why don't we all take a break and take it as a vacation? You can sweep through the first hunting ground alone." The level 3 psychic master youth rubbed his nose. "Let's go then. A level 3 psychic master is an existence that can crush everything in this broken place." With the flaming origin continent, although a telekinesis grandmaster couldn't defeat a hunter, if they were at the same level, a telekinesis grandmaster could defeat a hunter. Therefore, a place where even a level 1 hunter could run rampant, he, a level 3 psychic master, could easily sweep all the way. The leader of the level 5 psychic masters smiled and said, "Nothing is absolute." The person who came with the hunting ground owner's son was a level 5 psychic master. "We've lost contact with them, so we should be careful." The group of young men said one after another, "Got it, Uncle Hua." "Uncle Hua, how could we dare to disobey your orders?" Uncle Hua is right. But in their hearts, they didn't think much of it. A rundown place like the first hunting ground was just child's play. In the past, they couldn't be bothered to come because it was beneath their dignity. What kind of danger could there be in such a lousy place? Uncle Hua nodded to a LV-1 hunter. The level 1 hunter immediately took off his backpack from his back. He took out a barrel-shaped object and patted it lightly. He stretched out his hand and lightly patted it twice. The barrel-shaped object made a few soft cracking sounds, and hundreds of walnut-sized boxes popped out. In each box, there was a ball-shaped drone the size of an eyeball. After these drones took off, they quickly flew in all directions. The level 5 psychic master tightened his collar and said, "Let's leave this damned place of ice and snow first." Even though he was a level 5 psychic master, his body was no different from an ordinary person. Hearing this, everyone immediately activated their hover boots and flew towards the equator. At the same time, on the flaming origin continent, on the first hunting island. When the image of the first hunting ground was connected, the hunting ground owner's wife stayed in the monitoring room. The hunting ground owner occasionally came to take a look and patted his wife's shoulder lightly from time to time. "Don't worry, we've sent so many people this time. There won't be any problems." At the bottom of the earth. Mo sure knew the strength of these people from the virus clone's report. The strongest was a level 5 psychic master. Previously, he had easily crushed the bald level 5 psychic master. As for the rest of the hunters, although he had not directly fought with them, from the memories of the long-haired young man and the bald middle-aged man, he knew that the strength of the hunters was much worse than that of a great psyche master of the same level. Therefore, these people did not pose any threat to Mo sure at all. This made him heave a sigh of relief. He was originally worried that they would send out more psychic masters than the hunters. He did not expect that these small fries would come. In fact, in the Flaming Land, psychic masters were a minority. It was impossible for any random force to send out a psychic master. Thinking of this, Mo sure's consciousness returned to his body. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from the base. The group of psychic masters and psychic masters from the Flaming Land flew to the sky above the chilly base. The people who were busy in the base saw this group of people suddenly appear and fly over on hoverboards that had never appeared on Earth. Everyone's first reaction was disbelief. Below their feet this doesn't look like the technology of Earth at all. Who are they? As they spoke, the psychic power of the level 3 psychic masters spread out. It directly covered the entire base. Suddenly, the more than 70,000 people in the base were pressed to the ground as if they were suddenly carrying a huge rock on their backs. Everyone's faces were filled with horror. They did not know what they were experiencing at all. One by one, they raised their heads with difficulty and looked at the 10 people in the sky. When the 10 people in the sky looked at the group of people on the ground, their eyes and expressions were as if they were looking at a group of ants. The level 3 psychic master floated in midair. He stretched out his hands, as if an immortal had descended to earth. He began to shout to everyone in the base below. "You group of natives, listen up. From today onwards, your God will descend to the world." These 2 sentences were spread out along with the spread of his psychic power. It was as if it could directly hit everyone's heart. It was as if the deafening sound of everyone's heart was emitted. The psychic power of a psychic master had the effect of intimidating people's hearts. Everyone in the base looked at these 10 people in horror. Are they really gods? Oh my God! Gods really exist. I didn't believe it before, even if I was beaten to death, but today, I believe it. Although they are not the image of gods in our imagination, I'm afraid that only gods can do this kind of thing. After the level 3 psychic master finished shouting, he lightly pressed on the multifunctional watch on his wrist. Soon, the 3-dimensional projections of the long-haired young man and the bald middle-aged man appeared in midair. He asked, "You natives, have you ever seen them?" Chapter 208. Have any of you seen these 2 people before? The voice of the level 3 hunter was sent to the bottom of everyone's hearts with his telekinesis. Everyone's hearts trembled. Under the effect of the telekinesis of a psychic grandmaster, most people had no doubt that these 10 people were gods. God descends. God descends. It's really God. Of course, This kind of effect was ineffective against those with high levels of psychokinesis or those with strong willpower. Especially the few level 10 psychokinesis left behind by Immortal. They looked at the 10 people in the sky with solemn expressions. They're not gods, they're just mortals. A level 10 psychokinesis said solemnly. Seeing this, the level 3 psychic grandmaster snorted. You don't know what's good for you. As he spoke, his telekinesis instantly attacked the level 10 psychokinesis. Pop! The level 10 psychokinesis right hand exploded first. Then, pop, 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 the level 10 psychokinesis whole body exploded like firecrackers. In the end, his flesh and blood slowly dissipated in the air like smoke after firecrackers. When the surrounding people saw this, their expressions changed drastically. The level 3 psychic grandmaster pointed at the three-dimensional figures in the air and sneered. I'll ask one last time. Have you seen them? Everyone shook their heads. No, I haven't. The level 3 psychic grandmaster shrugged helplessly. Since you bunch of aborigines can't provide any help to us, then there's no need for you to exist. As he spoke, his telekinesis suddenly spread out. As a level 3 psychic grandmaster, his telekinesis could easily wipe out all 80,000 people here. Among the 9 people who came with him, although some of them frowned slightly, they didn't stop him. After all, in their eyes, the humans in the first hunting ground were just a group of uncivilized barbarians. They were just a group of prey. If they killed them, then so be it. However, this time, when the level 3 psychic grandmaster's telekinesis spread out, it seemed to be wrapped by something and couldn't expand at all. Not only that, but his psychokinesis was also being forced back into his body. The level 3 psychic master's expression suddenly changed. There are other great psychic masters. He was a level 3 telekinesis grandmaster, but in front of the other party's telekinesis, he didn't even have the slightest resistance. Obviously, his opponent must be a great psychic master, and a psychic master whose psychic power far exceeded his own. Those hunters didn't feel anything strange. As for the level 5 telekinesis grandmaster, when he tried to spread out his telekinesis to help the level 3 telekinesis grandmaster withstand the pressure, he was shocked to find that his telekinesis was unable to spread out. To be able to suppress his telekinesis to the point where it couldn't spread out, the other party was at least a level 6 telekinesis grandmaster. How could this be? How could there be a level 6 psychic in the first hunting ground? Could it be that a level 6 psychic from the Flaming Dawn continent had come to the first hunting ground? Such a thing had happened on the Flaming Dawn continent before. Some people, for some reasons, sneaked into some hunting grounds. In those hunting grounds, he was the strongest king. Therefore, he would continue to live in that hunting ground. For example, a criminal who sneaked into a hunting ground. As each hunting ground was extremely large, as long as he didn't actively expose himself, almost no one would discover that he had sneaked into this hunting ground. Thinking of this, the level 5 telekinesis grandmaster hurriedly said, "We are all from the Flaming Dawn continent. We have no enmity with you, so I hope you." Boom! Before he could finish his sentence, the level 5 telekinesis grandmaster exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Even the level 3 telekinesis grandmaster beside him exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The people on the ground, who were still in a state of shock, had a drastic change in expression when they saw this scene. God has fallen. How is this possible? How can a god fall? This. Is the end of the world really coming? Naturally, there was a sober person who shouted, "They aren't gods at all. They are just a bunch of people who are pretending to be gods." At the same time, the remaining 8 people in the sky were all horrified. Among the 10 of them, the 2 strongest people were instantly killed just like that. Then, would the remaining 8 of them be any better? Just as they were panicking, a figure came from afar and slowly flew over. As he flew over, all the drones within a radius of 100 kilometers exploded. Emosher's cold gaze swept over these people, his voice icy cold. "I'll give you a chance. 1-on-1, or a group fight." The 8 people looked at each other. In the end, it was still the level 3 hunter who smiled awkwardly. He replied, "You must be joking. How would we dare to attack you? We are only here to look for someone." Boom 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 boom. Before he could finish his sentence, he felt a mountain-like pressure fall from the sky. His body involuntarily fell to the ground. He crashed through the roof of a building and continued to crash through more than 10 floors. In the end, he crashed into the foundation of the building. The physical strength of a hunter was extremely strong. With Emosher's level 3 dragon will, it was still not possible for him to tear their bodies apart. But in this way, the level 3 hunter crashed through more than 10 floors, which was even more shocking. Emosher continued to look at the remaining 7 people. His voice was still cold. "I'll give you a chance. 1-on-1, or a group fight." After he finished speaking, he saw that these people were all terrified. He shook his head helplessly. "Okay, I promise not to use telekinesis." The remaining 7 were all level 1 hunters. At this time, when they heard Emosher say that he would not use telekinesis, they were all shocked. Could it be that this person had both telekinesis and a hunter? Even on the Flaming Dawn continent, people who cultivated both telekinesis and hunters were rare. And as long as they grew up, each of them would be an overlord. If it was in the past, they would not have dared to attack such an existence. But today, this person forced them to attack. And he promised not to use telekinesis. They looked at each other. In the end, a level 1 hunter said, "Group fight." As he spoke, he tore open his sleeve and revealed the right mechanical arm. The entire mechanical arm was metallic black, and under the sunlight, it emitted a black luster. The next moment, the muscles on his right shoulder wriggled and started to grow. Soon, the muscles wrapped around the entire mechanical arm. It formed a 1 foot wide, 2-meter-long giant sword. The next moment, the body of the giant sword turned fiery red. Because of the high temperature, the air around the giant sword seemed to be distorted. When the people on the ground saw this scene, they all felt that their worldview was shattered. What the hell was this? The mechanical arm could stretch freely. This was no longer a technology that could be found on Earth. Now, it was heating up a genetic weapon. Was this a dream? Chapter 209. In the entire Chile base, almost everyone's worldview was shattered. It had been more than 30 years since the apocalypse. In these 30 years, most of Earth's technology had been stagnant. The only improvement was in the research of viruses. However, what appeared in front of them now was a pair of flying shoes and a mechanical arm. This was far beyond their knowledge. At this moment, the hunters also realized that if they did not make a move today, they might not be able to escape. Although this guy's telekinesis was strong, he was arrogant enough to promise not to use it. This was no different from crippling one of his arms. If the 7 of them worked together, they might have a chance. Thinking of this, their right arms all condensed their genetic weapons. Everyone's genetic weapons were also heated to a fiery red color. The 7 of them formed a circle in the air, surrounding Emosher. In the next moment, the 7 genetic weapons attacked Emosher at almost the same time. 7 weapons, sabers, swords, spears, and whips. One of them even had a red-hot mace. Seeing this, Emosher's eyes also showed some excitement. The reason why he did not use his dragon will to kill these people directly. It was because he wanted to see the genetic weapons of these people from the Flaming Land and the way they fought. Although he already had some understanding of the Flaming Land from other people's memories, it was not enough to understand from other people's memories. This was especially true for things like fighting styles, which required him to personally experience actual combat in order to have a personal understanding of it. At the same time, Emosher also wanted to see how his combat strength was without using his dragon will. Of course, as for the promise not to use telekinesis, that was just an excuse Emosher used to force them to make a move. When it came to a life and death situation, who would care about promises? Moreover, he did not use telekinesis to begin with, but dragon will. At this moment, the genetic weapons of these people had completely enveloped an area of 1 kilometer around him. The high temperature of the genetic weapons made Emosure understand that even his body could not withstand the attacks of these people's genetic weapons. Although he had the invincible Vajra body, the Titan dragon breastplate, and the dragon blood armor, these 3 layers of defense. But that was only invincible on Earth. Now that he encountered alien genetic weapons, he did not dare to casually take them head-on. His figure moved as he activated Dragon Shadow Step. In the blink of an eye, a giant dragon shadow was left behind. Then, he broke away from the encirclement. Those hunters were all stunned. What kind of freaking movement technique was that? They didn't even see it clearly, but they escaped the encirclement in an instant. Furthermore, there was even a giant dragon's shadow. What the hell was this? At this moment, in the building that had been smashed through, the level 3 hunter finally came to his senses. However, under the suppression of Emosure's draconic will, he was firmly suppressed there, unable to move at all. When the 7 hunters saw that Emosure had escaped from the encirclement, they immediately chased after Emosure. Emosure made use of his speed and instantly appeared beside a long spear genetic warrior. He also summoned the huge axe genetic weapon that he had not used for a long time. It hacked down towards the head of the hunter. The hunter hurriedly raised his gun. Boom! In the end, he managed to block Emosure's giant axe. However, under Emosure's immense strength, he was directly smashed to the ground. A human-shaped crater was formed on the ground. The ground around the crater also started to crack inch by inch. When the other hunters saw this, they were all shocked. What great strength! They could clearly feel that this person's level was 1 level lower than theirs. He had not even reached the level of a hunter. However, this strength was actually able to crush a level 1 hunter. What kind of freak was this? One had to know that on the Flaming Origin continent, the difference between a level 10 great hunter and a level 1 hunter was huge. A level 1 hunter could easily crush hundreds of level 10 great hunters. In terms of strength, they would be completely crushed. However, this level 10 great hunter was now crushing a level 1 hunter. Was there still any justice in this world? How would they know that Emosure had consumed so much Titan Dragon bloodline modification fluid? His body had already undergone a fundamental change. Although he had not become a true giant dragon's body, he was still far from being comparable to an ordinary hunter. Therefore, it was absolutely easy for him to challenge someone of a higher level and crush his opponent in terms of strength. Next, Emosure used the Dragon Shadow Step to constantly move between the 6 of them. From time to time, he would swing his axe as if it had the power to destroy the world. Even if these people were able to react in time and block his giant axe, they were basically sent flying hundreds of meters away by his abnormal strength. The more these people fought, the more shocked they became. Previously, they thought that this guy was just a level 10 great hunter and that they could easily defeat him without using their telekinesis. However, they never thought that this guy would not only not be at a disadvantage but also completely suppress the 7 of them by himself. He could still crush someone of a higher level than him. What kind of freak was this? At this time, Emosure was getting braver and braver as he fought. He thought to himself, still not using your trump card? He knew that all the hunters had an absolute trump card. This trump card was extremely powerful, and they would not use it unless they had no other choice. Since these guys still had not taken out their trump cards, he could only add fuel to the fire. Thinking of this, Emosure used the Dragon Shadow Step and instantly appeared behind a hunter. The giant axe in his hand fiercely chopped down toward the hunter's head. The speed of this attack was extremely fast and sudden. That guy did not even have time to react. He was split into 2 halves by the giant axe. Like 2 slices of pork, he flew far away. These 2 slices of pork fell directly into the base below. When everyone saw this, they all screamed and dodged. Some of the cowards were scared shitless. At this time, there were only 5 hunters left in the sky. They saw that this level 10 great hunter was actually so powerful. All of them were shocked. They looked at each other and then gathered in the same direction. The next moment, the 5 of them attacked Immortal together. When they were 2 to 5 meters away from Immortal, their genetic weapons suddenly shone brightly, emitting a dazzling white light. At the same time, their genetic weapons also released a red and white laser-like energy. This energy came extremely quickly. Swish, 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 Immortal was already prepared. With a leap of the dragon's shadow step, he was already behind the 5 of them. At the same time, the energy released by the genetic weapons of these 6 people continued to extend a few hundred meters forward, sweeping toward the few buildings in front of them. Those buildings were directly broken in half by the force of the sweep. With a rumble, they collapsed. This was the trump card of a hunter. Every hunter had a certain amount of energy stored in their cells. This energy could allow them to be more powerful when attacking. When running, it could increase their speed. However, the most important use of this energy was to release it through genetic weapons in the form of laser-like energy. Its speed was extremely fast and its destructive power was extremely strong. When the energy of a level 1 hunter was released through genetic weapons, even a level 5 hunter would not dare to take it head-on. Chapter 210. When the energy was released, the genetic martial arts would become a hot weapon similar to guns and cannons. And the energy would become the bullet of the firearm. Its lethality was extremely high. Genetic weapons that were releasing energy were generally known as energy weapons. Even a level 1 hunter could easily kill a level 5 hunter with an energy weapon in a sneak attack. However, there was a small flaw in energy weapons. When releasing energy, there would be a short charging time. The lower the level, the longer this charging time would be. For example, these level 1 scavengers only had 1 second to charge up their power. But if one reached level 10, the charging time would be reduced to only 0.1 seconds. It was precisely because Immortal knew that their energy weapons needed time to charge up that he was able to use his speed to dodge their energy attacks. When the 5 hunters saw that the level 10 great hunter in front of them was actually able to dodge their energy weapon attack, their complexions changed again. It should be known that in their flaming land, there were no great hunters who could dodge energy attacks. Although their energy weapon attacks had a charging time, it was still not enough. But with the speed of a great hunter, it was impossible to dodge. After one energy attack, the dazzling red and white light on the 5 people's energy weapons gradually faded. It returned to its previous fiery red color. Immortal knew that this was because energy weapons consumed a lot of energy. Generally speaking, a level 1 hunter could only use an energy weapon once. After using it, the energy in their body would be completely exhausted. At this time, they no longer had energy and only had the strength of their bodies left. Whether it was speed or strength, they were far inferior to before. If they were level 1 hunters before, then after releasing their energy, they were at most half-step hunters. This was also why they would not use energy weapons easily. At this time, these 5 people had already withered after releasing their energy. In front of Immortal, they had no power to fight back. Immortal swung his axe one by one, chopping them all down. Only the 2 hunters on the ground were left. One was level 3 and the other was level 1. Immortal was too lazy to use energy weapons against those level 1 hunters. He leaped to the side of the hunter. That hunter had just raised his right arm and was about to use energy weapons. Immortal's giant axe had already been lifted. Ka! The giant axe instantly chopped at the joint between the mechanical arm and the shoulder. He knew that this part was the weakness of every hunter. It seemed that the defense here was extremely thick. A thick layer of cuticle covered the joint between the mechanical arm and the shoulder tightly. But as long as it could pierce through the thick layer of cuticle and hit the joint, it would be a fatal blow to the hunter. With this chop, the thick layer of cuticle on that person's shoulder was directly cut open. The giant axe chopped at the joint. The genetic weapon on that person's entire right arm was directly cut off. The genetic weapon wrapped around the mechanical arm instantly lost its fiery red light. The weapon on top of it instantly turned into flesh and dried up. revealing the mechanical arm inside. On the shoulder of the man, where the mechanical arm had been severed, sparks kept coming out. At the same time, blood. It looked like a bleeding robot. This scene looked very strange. When the humans in the base, they all felt that it was unreal. Was this F*King reality? This was basically a science fiction novel. After chopping off that person's genetic weapon, Emosure flew up and kicked. That person was instantly sent flying far away. Bang 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 bang, he crashed through 4 walls in a row. In the end, his body hit a steel bar on the 5th wall, and only then did he stop. His chest caved in and blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. He was no longer breathing. However, the steel bar did not pierce through his body. Instead, it was directly bent by his body. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Hitting the steel bar with such force was like hitting the tip of a nail. No matter what, he would be penetrated. Not only was this person not penetrated, he even bent the steel bar. How perverted was this body's strength? But such a perverted body was actually kicked to death by this human. How terrifying was this human's strength? If the person who was kicked to death was said to have a perverted body, then this human who kicked him to death was the most perverted of perverts. When that level 3 hunter saw his companions who came with him, he fell from the sky one after another. He saw that this level 1 hunter was actually kicked to death by this guy. The shock in his heart was far greater than any other time in his life. What kind of monster was this guy? As a level 10 great hunter, he was actually able to crush 7 level 1 hunters by himself. In the history of the entire Flaming Land, there were occasionally examples of level 10 great hunters defeating level 1 hunters. But 1 against 7 and still being able to completely crush them, there was not a single one. This guy was not a human at all. He was King animal. At this time, Emosure slowly landed. He landed in front of that level 3 hunter. He released the suppression of his dragon will and slowly said, "I'll give you 3 chances to attack." The reason why he gave this guy 3 chances to attack was that he wanted to practice his own combat experience. In the future, it would be good to crush his enemies. But what if he could not? He needed combat experience to support it. Now that he could get some combat experience from this guy, he naturally would not let it go. That level 3 hunter heard this and felt a chill in his heart. He wanted to open his mouth and beg for mercy. But now it seemed that this guy had no intention of letting him go. Thinking of this, he became ruthless in his heart. Since this was the case, then he could only fight to the death. He put on a look of terror and implored bitterly, "We have no enmity with you in the past. I don't know how we have offended you. If we have offended you in any way, please be magnanimous and let me go this time. In the future, I will definitely." Speaking of this, the genetic weapon in his right hand suddenly condensed. In the next moment, he stomped his feet. He leaped towards Emosure like a fish. At the same time, the genetic weapon in his right arm had already condensed. The fiery red long spear genetic weapon pierced towards Emosure's chest. Emosure used his giant axe to block the long spear genetic weapon. That level 3 hunter's spear had instantly turned and faced Emosure. At the same time, the red and white light on the tip of the spear shone brightly. It was dazzling. Emosure activated his dragon shadow step and disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already behind that level 3 hunter. But in the next moment, Shio, a laser-like red and white light suddenly shot out from the end of the spear. It instantly pierced through Emosure's dragon blood armor. Even half of the Titan dragon breastplate was pierced through. Chapter 211. Emosure also did not expect that the long spear genetic weapon could shoot out energy from both ends. At this moment, even his dragon blood armor had been pierced through. He made a mental note of this. After that, his figure flashed again and he appeared far away. The level 3 hunter was also shocked. Generally speaking, even if it was a level 5 hunter, after being hit by his energy, they would basically be disabled. But this guy was completely fine after being hit by his attack. How was this possible? He did not think that it was the effect of Emosher's blood-red armor. On the flaming land, other than the energy shield on the armor, there was nothing that could block energy attacks. However, he was a level 3 hunter after all. Although he was shocked, his hands did not panic. The long spear in his hand shone brightly and instantly extended more than 10 meters. At the same time, the red and white light from the long spear once again shot toward Emosher. And this time, he used the energy weapon to draw a few circles in the air. These circles sealed off all of Emosher's escape routes. Emosher could only use the big axe in his hand to block in front of him. At the same time, the big axe instantly extended 2 meters high and 1 meter wide. His body was completely shielded from the attack. Buzz buzz buzz, a few soft sounds. Sparks flew from Emosher's big axe. The whole surface of the big axe looked as if it had been welded a few times. Several fiery messy red circles were displayed. At the same time, under this high-temperature melting, even Emosher's genetic weapon was half melted. Emosher's heart trembled. The attack of an energy weapon was indeed powerful. One must know that in the past, on Earth, there was nothing that could cause even a slight scratch on his genetic weapon. However, the level 3 hunter's expression was several times worse than Emosher's. This kid's genetic weapon could actually block the attack of an energy weapon. What the hell was this? One must know that on the flaming land, only the energy shield of a mecha could block the attack of an energy weapon. If one were to use a genetic martial art to block an energy martial art, one would simply be courting death. This was because anyone's genetic martial arts, even if they were a desolate hunter or a great desolate hunter, would not be able to withstand the attack of an energy weapon. This kid was just a level 10 great hunter, yet his genetic weapon was able to block his energy weapon attack. This was King ridiculous. At this moment, his Adam's apple moved. As a level 3 hunter, he could only use his energy weapon 3 times. This was the last time he could not use it so easily. Thinking of this, his figure moved. The hoverboard beneath his feet started to move. He flew out of the base in an instant. Emosher sneered. Trying to escape. Could he escape? In the next moment, Emosher's right arm swung in a circle, and the giant axe chopped downwards. The giant axe instantly expanded in the air. It was more than 200 meters long. Just like Pangu's giant axe, it chopped down towards the level 3 hunter. The level 3 hunter thought that if he ran away, Emosher would chase after him. He could then use his energy weapon to launch a counterattack. In the past, his hit rate with this move was 100%. However, he did not expect that this kid would not play by the rules. He directly chopped down towards him. At this moment, it was too late for him to dodge. He could only hurriedly raise his spear to block the attack, wanting to block the giant axe. Boom, there was a loud sound. The giant axe directly brought the level 3 hunter down from the sky. On the ground, a huge crack that was more than 500 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 10 meters deep instantly appeared. The edge of the crack was as smooth as a mirror. At the end of the crack, 2 30-meter-tall buildings also had a 10-meter-wide crack on them. The afterglow of the setting sun passed through this crack. It was like the gate to heaven. When everyone in the base saw this scene, they all widened their eyes and opened their mouths wide. This destructive power was too shocking. In the center of this huge gully, the level 3 hunter's lower body had already sunk deep into the soil. His upper body was still holding his long spear genetic martial art, maintaining a blocking posture. On his long spear genetic martial art, there was a mark that was about 1 centimeter deep. In the end, Emosher's genetic martial art was not able to split apart that guy's long spear genetic martial art with his axe. However, on that guy's right arm, at the interface between the mechanical chop and his shoulder, sparks kept coming out. Moreover, blood kept seeping out. It turned out that although Emosher was not able to split apart his genetic martial art with his axe, the power of the axe was too great. However, the force of this axe was too great. It directly shook the interface between his mechanical arm and shoulder, causing it to malfunction. That level 3 hunter looked at the interface of his right arm in disbelief. How was this possible? How could this guy be so strong? The terrifying degree of this strength was actually much stronger than his, a level 3 hunter. He was just a level 10 great hunter. Normally, he would be able to crush him easily. How could he be so strong now? Was it because he was too weak, or was this kid too strong? Of course, he did not know that Emosher's body had been modified by the modification liquid. Naturally, it could not be measured by the strength of a normal great hunter. It could be said that Emosher's strength was already equivalent to a level 4 hunters. Naturally, it was not something that this level 3 hunter could withstand. At this time, Emosher saw that the level 3 hunter's genetic martial art had malfunctioned and could no longer display stronger combat power. He was too lazy to continue entangling with him. The huge axe chopped down once again. Kacha, the level 3 hunter's genetic martial art was immediately split into two. At the same time, the huge axe fell on the level 3 hunter's head. The level 3 hunter was split into two halves. At this point, all the invaders were wiped out. Emosher closed his eyes slightly, recalling the battle scene just now. He had a deeper understanding of the strength, speed, and fighting style of the hunters. He made an estimation in his mind. With his current strength, without using his telekinesis, he could crush a level 3 hunter. If he encountered a level 4 hunter, it would be a 50-50 chance. If he only used his telekinesis, he could also crush a level 3 hunter. If the Long Nianshi and the hunters used all their methods, crushing a level 5 hunter should not be a problem. If he encountered a level 6 hunter, it should be a 50-50 chance. As a level 10 great hunter and a level 3 Long Nianshi, he was able to crush a level 5 hunter by so many levels. Even on the Flaming Dawn continent, he was considered a rare talent. Of course, Emosher still had the absolute trump card of summoning the blood breeds. So in fact, his overall strength was stronger. As for how strong he was, he did not use the skill of summoning the blood breeds, so he did not know. Of course, this skill could not be used casually. The strength, number, and type of the things that were summoned were all random. And it did not distinguish between friend and foe. At that time, if he was also killed, it would be awkward. Chapter 212. Emosher killed these 10 people. He left a huge ravine more than 200 meters long in the chilly base. After that, he ignored the humans in the chilly base. He took a step forward, leaving behind a 100-meter-tall dragon shadow, and then disappeared. After a while, the dragon shadow also slowly disappeared. In the chilly base, all the humans felt like they were dreaming. From the arrival of the 10 godlike powerhouses to the moment they were pressed to the ground by an invisible force. Then, the powerhouse with a pair of energy wings appeared. Finally, he killed the 10 people and left. Only 5 minutes had passed. All the 11 people were unbelievably powerful. They were so powerful that it was beyond their understanding. Especially the human with the pair of energy wings. He was so powerful that even the 10 powerhouses were afraid of him. If the 10 powerhouses were gods, then the human with the pair of energy wings could be called the God Slayer. No, Slayer was not enough to describe him. To be more precise, he was the God Slayer. From that day onwards, this powerful God Slayer never appeared in the chilly base again. However, the legend of the God Slayer had been circulating in the chilly base for thousands of years. At the same time, on the first hunting island of the Flaming Dawn continent. In the monitoring room. The hunting madam saw that all the monitoring screens had dimmed. She was so shocked that her face turned pale. She quickly shouted to the outside of the monitoring room. "Someone, come and take a look at the monitors." Someone, soon, the person in charge of the monitoring room rushed over and carefully checked all the monitors. In the end, he came to a conclusion that made everyone feel uneasy. "Madam, all the drones have been destroyed." One had to know that the people who went this time had brought 100 drones. 100 drones were enough to cover a radius of hundreds of kilometers. Now, they were all destroyed at almost the same time. What did this mean? In her uneasiness, the hunting madam quickly went to the hunting master's office and looked for him. "Son, something happened to our son." The hunting master's expression also changed. "What's going on?" "All the drones have been destroyed," the hunting madam said with a sobbing tone. The hunting master comforted his wife. "Don't worry, I'll use the interstellar communication to contact them first." As he spoke, he immediately ordered someone to connect to the interstellar communication of those people. However, after connecting for more than half an hour, there was no response. The lady of the hunting ground could not stop her tears from gushing out. She patted the hunting ground master's arm and said, "You must save our son. He is our only son." The hunting ground master's brows were tightly knitted together. However, he still comforted his wife. It might be the magnetic field of the first hunting ground. "I will ask Shachi to bring the Sandstorm Mercenary Regiment to the first hunting ground to have a look." The head of the hunting ground quickly nodded and patted his wife's shoulder. "Don't worry." 5 days later, a handsome young man with a height of 1.8 meters and a woman with an exaggerated figure walked in quickly. That woman had an extremely exaggerated figure, but she also had a beautiful face. With a devilish figure and an angelic face, these words were tailor-made for her. As soon as the woman appeared, she nervously asked the hunting ground owner and his wife, "Dad, Mom, did something happen to little brother when he went to the hunting ground?" Mrs. Hunting Ground just cried, unable to say a word. The hunting ground master shook his head with a hint of worry between his brows. "I'm not sure yet. It has been more than 40 days since your brother went to the hunting ground, and there is still no news from him. I sent 10 people, but there is still no news from him. And the 100 drones they brought also lost contact almost at the same time. That's why I asked Shachi to come over and bring some mercenaries to have a look." The handsome young man named Shachi heard this and his face suddenly became solemn. "Father-in-law, mother-in-law, don't worry. I brought the vice-captain and several captains of our mercenary regiment. Basically, they were all level 7 hunters. There are also 5,000 members of the mercenary group and me, a LV-8 hunter. Oh, right, I also brought the cheetah mech of the mercenary regiment. Let's make a simple plan. We will set off tomorrow morning and find little brother no matter what," he said very firmly. The hunting ground master showed a hint of gratitude in his eyes and patted his shoulder heavily. "Shachi, it's all on you." The hunting ground master's wife also nodded and said, "Shachi, it's all thanks to you." At this time, the woman with the exaggerated figure also said, "Shachi, I'll go with you." Shachi shook his head and said with concern, "Bertha, the first hunting ground may have been very safe before, but it is no longer safe now. You can stay here with my in-laws and wait for my good news." Bertha said stubbornly, "How can I be at ease if there is no news from little brother? I must go with you. I'm a level 7 psychic master, much stronger than those in the mercenary regiment." This, Shachi seemed to be in a dilemma. The hunting ground master pondered for a moment and took a deep breath. "Shachi, take Bertha with you." Shachi shook his head helplessly and said, "Okay, Bertha, remember, when you go there, you must stay by my side at all times. If you are in any danger, I will be able to protect you immediately." Bertha nodded obediently and said, "Okay." Soon, Shachi, Bertha, and several senior members of the Sandstorm Mercenary Regiment were in the meeting room to draw up a plan of action. The vice-captain said to Shachi and Bertha, "Captain, Madam Captain, we have too many people this time, so we will split into 2 coordinates. You will take 2,500 people to the first teleportation point. The captains and I will take 2,500 people to the second teleportation point. When we get there, we will see if we will meet up directly or split up to search." Shachi nodded and said, "Okay, we will do as you say. Now, let's split up and prepare. We will leave in half an hour." After the mercenary regiment left, Shachi came to Bertha and gently put his arm around her shoulder. "Don't worry, little brother will be fine." Bertha nodded and said, "Shachi, for our family, you put down so many important things and rushed over here. You even personally brought people to the first hunting ground. You are so nice." Shachi shook his head and said, "We are already here. Isn't your little brother my little brother? How can I not care about my little brother's business?" Bertha nodded and said after a moment of silence, "Shachi, this time when little brother comes back, let's have a child." Shachi heard this and was slightly stunned. A moment later, his eyes were filled with excitement. "Bertha, is this true?" Bertha left a kiss on Shachi's face and said with a smile, "Silly, when have I ever lied to you?" Shachi immediately laughed like a child. "That's great. That's great, Bertha, I love you." 10 days ago. Emosher returned to base C1 after wiping out the group of people. Under the grape trellis of the corpse farm, Emosher was lying on a deck chair, basking in the sun while thinking about something. Chapter 213. 10 days ago, Emosher had just killed those hunters and psychic grandmasters. Under the grape trellis of the corpse farm, Emosher was lying on a recliner with his eyes slightly closed. It looked like he was resting, but in fact, he was thinking about something. Last time, he killed 2 people. This time, there were 10. If he killed these 10 people this time, how many would come next time? Furthermore, he was certain that the next one would be even stronger than this one. He had to think of a way to make them unable to come to Earth in the future, or to make them afraid to come to Earth. It was impossible to make them unable to come to Earth. The Antarctic blood waterfall was just a coordinate. Even if the blood waterfall was destroyed, the coordinates were still there, and they would still come again. And if he wanted them to not dare to come to Earth, he could only desperately improve his strength. Upgrading the sea dragon clone to a level 10 wild beast as soon as possible was one way. But this was treating the symptoms and not the root cause. Although there weren't many hunters on the Flaming Origin continent, who could guarantee that the hunting ground master wouldn't be able to find a hunter to help. So Emosher thought about it and felt that this matter had to be solved from the source. After thinking for half an hour, he suddenly had a bright idea. He had an idea. But the most important thing now was to improve the strength of the sea dragon clone. Emosher had planned to destroy the other undersea mother nests before going to the Mariana Trench mother nest and Bermuda. That would be safer. But now, he had to hurry up and improve his strength, the faster the better. So he decided to go directly to the Mariana Trench mother nest later. System, sign in for a special event. Killing those hunters and great hunters was naturally a special event. The system's voice answered quickly. Sign in successful. Sign in event, kill intruder, sign in reward, flame dragon battle axe. Emosher checked the reward in his mind. Flame dragon battle axe, inject the energy in the body into the genetic weapon, and the genetic weapon can evolve into the flame dragon battle axe. The flame dragon battle axe is invincible and indestructible. Best effect on the genetic and energy weapons of the hunters. Seeing this reward, Emosher revealed a faint smile on his face. Today, the energy weapon of the level 3 hunter had made him feel the pressure from the energy weapon. Under the attack of the energy weapon, even the dragon blood armor could be penetrated. Previously, it was sometimes written as blood dragon battle armor. Correction here, it's dragon blood battle armor. Even his genetic martial arts had almost been pierced through. This power was ridiculous. Now that he had the fire dragon battle axe, he could defend against the opponent's energy weapon. Secondly, in terms of offense, they were much more domineering and invincible than before. After signing in, Emosher used the blood dragon's eye to look at Happy, who was busy. He saw that Happy's level was still at ? She didn't know when her talent would awaken. I'm Happy. Emosher shouted at Happy. Happy put down the work in his hands and walked over. She stared at Emosher with her big, expressive eyes. Emosher said, "It's getting hot. You should rest for a while. Don't be so busy." Happy's smile bloomed, and it was extremely infectious. He gestured, "If I'm busy, I'll feel useful. Otherwise, others will say that Brother Mo's woman is useless." Mo sure smiled and shook his head. "Happy, you don't have to do anything. When the time comes, you'll realize that you're more useful than anyone else." Mo sure still didn't know what Happy's talent was. However, just looking at the difficulty of unlocking it, after being in the virtual dragon palace for so long, 2/3 of the people in the base had already become zombie hunters or psychokinesis. However, her talent hadn't been unlocked yet. Even if one were to use their toes to think, they would know that this was definitely an incredible talent. Happy naturally didn't know this. She only felt that Brother Mo was comforting her. She was very happy about Brother Mo's concern. However, she didn't put down the work in her hands. Brother Mo was so good to her. How could she drag him down? When Mo sure saw that Happy was busy, he stopped trying to persuade him. Instead, he closed his eyes and ordered a clone to go to the South Pole Blood Waterfall. At the same time, his consciousness had already entered the body of the sea dragon clone at the bottom of the sea. He controlled the sea dragon clone and headed towards the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean. The current sea dragon clone had already become a level 5 desolate beast. It was unstoppable in the sea. Moreover, its speed had reached 50 meters per second. Even so, because the distance was too far, it took 2 days to reach the top of the Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench was more than 2,500 kilometers long and more than 70 kilometers wide. The deepest part was 11,000 meters. It was the deepest place in the world's oceans. Before the apocalypse, this was one of the harshest places on Earth. It was completely dark, high pressure, and cold. Very few fish lived in this place. But now, Mo sure used his dragon consciousness to explore the 70-kilometer wide trench, which was covered by huge sarcomas with a diameter of 100 meters. It looked like a layer of huge blood-red grapes had been spread here. Around the trench, thousands of thick sanguisurincus completely covered the bottom of the sea. The thickest sanguisurincus reached more than 20 meters. Most sanguisurincus were close to the surface of the sea, but there were also sanguisurincus that were like kelp, drifting with the undercurrents at the bottom of the sea. Once a mutant beast passed by, they would entangle it and drag it into the nest. Dozens of sanguisurincus, after sensing the arrival of Mo sure's sea dragon clone, immediately swayed excitedly and entangled the sea dragon clone. The long way that Mo sure had been cultivating for months was activated. In the next moment, these sanguisurincus instantly withered. They didn't even have a chance to retreat. The nest obviously also sensed the power of this mutant beast. All the sanguisurincus stayed away from the sea dragon clone for a short period of time. At the same time, these sanguisurincus were also secretly wary of the sea dragon clone. Mo sure ignored these sanguisurincus. Instead, he stared at the 100-meter-long sarcomas. This nest was different from the other ones at the bottom of the sea. The other sarcomas were only 50 meters in diameter at most. This nest's sarcomas, however, were an astonishing 100 meters in diameter. And the sarcomas of the other nests could be considered an entrance and exit. Infected creatures could enter and exit through the sarcomas. They entered the sarcomas, recovered their bodies in the blood pool, and strengthened themselves before leaving the nest to catch mutant beasts. But when Mo sure just probed with his dragon will, he found that not a single mutant beast entered or exited through the sarcomas. All the level 10 super mutant beasts, after capturing the other mutant beasts, placed them near the nest. Then they would leave without stopping to continue catching mutant beasts. Mo sure couldn't figure out why with his dragon will. But when he looked with the blood dragon's eye, he immediately understood. It turned out that there was a figure slowly swimming in every sarcomas here. And those figures were basically level 10 super mutant beasts. Every sarcomas here was actually an egg. Chapter 214. These sarcomas seemed to have some kind of protective measures. When Mo sure used his level 3 dragon's will to investigate, he couldn't detect anything strange inside. However, when he used the blood dragon's eye to look through the surface to see the essence, he was surprised to find that there was a mutated beast 70 to 80 meters long in every sarcoma here. Moreover, every mutated beast had reached level 10 super mutated. If all the sarcomas in the entire Mariana Trench mother nest were eggs, then how many level 10 super mutated beasts would there be in the entire mother nest? There was no need to go to other trenches. Just devouring all the level 10 super mutated beasts here would definitely be able to advance to level 10 wild beasts. However, Emosher didn't rashly go to the sarcomas to devour. Instead, he directly activated the 1000 Sanguisurincus skill. The sea dragon clone's body reached 150 meters long in a short period of time. Then, the skin and flesh on its body wriggled quickly. More than 50 Sanguisurincus were ejected. These 50 Sanguisurincus instantly shot out like lightning. They directly pierced through more than 50 sarcomas. They pierced into the bodies of the level 10 super mutated beasts in the sarcomas. Then, the Sanguisurincus turned into thousands of tiny Sanguisurincus in the bodies of the super mutated beasts and probed into all parts of the bodies of these super mutated beasts. They continuously sucked the blood of these level 10 super mutated beasts. Moreover, these tiny Sanguisurincus could also spit out strong acids that corroded the bones and muscle tissues of these super mutated beasts. In the end, their entire bodies turned into blood and were absorbed by the Sanguisurincus. From the outside, these Sanguisurincus looked like straws that were inserted into the sarcomas. The sea dragon clone continuously sucked the blood of these sarcomas through the Sanguisurincus. Using this method, it actually devoured 50 level 10 super mutated beasts in just 5 minutes. After the sarcomas were sucked clean, they all deflated. Another 50 Sanguisurincus popped out of the sea dragon clone's body and continued to suck the other 50 level 10 mutated beasts. Emosher was secretly delighted. Using this method to devour level 10 mutated beasts was much more efficient than before. In the past, it would take the sea dragon clone about half an hour to devour a level 10 super mutated beast. But now, it had devoured 50 of them within 5 minutes. At this rate, it would probably take 3 to 5 months to devour all the sarcoma eggs in the Mariana Trench. Of course, while the sea dragon clone was devouring, Emosher was also constantly probing the surroundings with his dragon consciousness. This was especially true for the broodmother nest in the trench, which was filled with a thick smell of blood. He had a hunch that this mother nest wasn't simple. Although the sea dragon clone, a level 5 wild beast, could already crush any super mutated beast. However, no matter how strong they were still weak in the face of some natural disasters. Therefore, even now, Emosher was still very cautious in all his actions in these trenches. The devouring took 5 days. During these 5 days, Emosher couldn't remember how many level 10 super mutated beasts the sea dragon clone had devoured. He only knew that during these 10 days, the broodmother nest Sanguisurincus had floated over several times, trying to attack the sea dragon clone. In the end, it was easily repelled by Emosher's long way. At the same time, after devouring a large number of level 10 super mutated beasts, the sea dragon clone had finally reached the level of a level 9 wild beast. With its current strength, even if Emosher's main body were to face it head-on, it would be reduced to dregs in an instant. However, during these few days, Emosher had always felt a little uneasy. Perhaps it was his combat intuition that had been cultivated in long-term battles. He felt that this uneasiness came from the bottomless Mariana Trench below. The entire trench was filled with blood. Even if he probed with his dragon consciousness, he couldn't completely explore the bottom of the trench. He could only pray in his heart. He hoped that the sea dragon clone could rise to a level 10 wild beast as soon as possible, and then leave this damned place as soon as possible. After swallowing for another 10 minutes or so, Emosher compared the surrounding terrain with the Mariana Trench that he had asked someone to check. This was already the deepest part of the Mariana Trench. It was 11,000 meters deep. That was 11 kilometers. The uneasiness in Emosher's heart grew even more. At this moment, above the blood river in front of him, a mountain peak suddenly emerged. This mountain peak was in the shape of a pyramid. Just the part exposed above the Blood River was more than 50 meters high. At the same time, a circular cave suddenly appeared in the center of the mountain peak. The circular cave was about 50 meters in diameter. And it was extremely round. Obviously, this couldn't have been a naturally formed cave. Under such an oceanic trench, the sudden appearance of such a mountain peak above the fishy bloody river still made one's hair stand on end. Mo Sure was about to use his dragon consciousness to explore the cave when a huge suction force suddenly came from the circular cave. It sucked the entire sea dragon clone in that direction. Mo Sure frowned, and the sea dragon clone's tail quickly swayed, trying to break free from this suction force. But this suction force was so strong that no matter how the sea dragon clone swayed its body, it couldn't break free. Mo Sure simply controlled the sea dragon clone and directly turned its head. The sea dragon clone opened its huge mouth. Puff! A stream of viscous green liquid gushed out from it. As the huge cave kept sucking in the sea dragon clone, it directly sucked in the strong green acid. The next moment, puff! Even in the sea, Mo Sure could see that the huge hole was constantly emitting green smoke. At the same time, a pungent stench spread out. The surrounding Sanguisurincus withered instantly when this pungent smell spread over. At the same time, the mountain peak kept shaking violently from side to side and shrank under the blood water. An extremely painful wail could be heard from the pool of blood. Roar, roar, however, it was obviously not over yet. Just over a minute later, in the blood river ahead, another 50-meter-tall mountain peak emerged. And this mountain peak continued to rise. Soon, a second and third round cave appeared on the mountain peak. All the round caves had a diameter of more than 50 meters. Soon, the mountain peak, like a sea-stabilizing needle, emerged from the blood river high up. It could be seen that it was covered with huge round holes with a diameter of 50 meters. At this time, Mo Sure had already discovered the true face of this thing. It turned out to be an octopus's tentacle. Those round holes with a diameter of 50 meters were actually the suction cups on its tentacles. At this time, the tentacle emerged from the blood river, and it was more than 2,000 meters long. Even though Mo Sure had seen the white snake that Su Fu transformed into, he was still shocked at this time. One had to know that this was just one tentacle. Who knew how many more tentacles it had not emerged? Although the sea dragon was now a wild beast and was not afraid of any creatures on earth, it was always better to be careful. Chapter 2:15. That huge tentacle was 2,000 meters tall. Seeing this, Mo Sure controlled the sea dragon clone to move up. It wasn't that he was afraid. With the current strength of the sea dragon clone, it was invincible on Earth. However, with his usual life, it was better to be careful before he figured out what was going on. However, just as he was controlling the sea dragon clone to move up, an undercurrent suddenly surged quickly in the dark bottom of the sea. Even though the sea dragon's body had now reached 190 meters. At this time, it was still involuntarily moved more than 500 meters to the side by this undercurrent. Looking back, he saw more than 50 tentacles stretching out from the bottom of the blood river. Each tentacle was more than 2,000 meters long. They were like more than 50 thick pythons, swimming toward the sea dragon clone. Mo Sure thought to himself, what AF * King Big Octopus. Then, he controlled the sea dragon clone and directly released the pressure of a level 9 wild beast. The 50 or so tentacles that were attacking the sea dragon clone suddenly froze. Then, as if they had been electrocuted, they began to tremble. Then, they quickly shrank down into the blood river. This was the natural pressure of a wild beast on a super-mutated beast. Then, the sea dragon clone opened its cave-like mouth and roared, roar, roar. At the bottom of the blood river, dozens of 2,000-meter-long tentacles stretched out again. But this time, it didn't attack the sea dragon clone. Instead, it raised the dozens of tentacles like a human surrendering. At the same time, its body also revealed the blood river. Just as Mo Sure had guessed, this was a super-mutated octopus. It had lived at the bottom of the sea for who knew how many years. It happened to encounter the mutation of the virus X and grew into its current form. If it weren't for the invisible restrictions on Earth, it would have been a wild beast by now. Emosure didn't hold back. He controlled the sea dragon clone and flicked out more than 10 Sanguisurincus. The Sanguisurincus pierced into the body of the giant octopus and began to suck. Although the super-mutated octopus was extremely frightened, it didn't even dare to struggle under the natural pressure of a wild beast. It took about half an hour to devour the super-mutated octopus. Then, he signed in his mind. System, check in for a special event. Sign-in successful. Sign-in event, killed level 10 super-mutated octopus, sign-in reward, thousands of tentacles. Emosure checked the skill description of the tentacles in his mind. His heart skipped a beat. Then, he controlled the sea dragon clone's skin and flesh to squirm. A tentacle slowly grew out of it. Although this tentacle was not as big as the super mutant octopus's tentacle, it could be lengthened or shortened at will. At this moment, under Emosure's control, it continued to extend until it finally reached a length of 5,000 meters. A mosasaurus that was more than 100 meters long had tentacles that were 5,000 meters long. This made Emosure feel incredulous. Furthermore, these 5,000-meter-long tentacles had a suction cup every 100 meters. Emosure controlled the tentacle and placed it on the sarcomas in front of him. It just so happened that each of the suction cups was sucking on a sarcoma. Then, Emosure's mind moved. From all the suction cups, Sanguisurincus poked out and pierced into the sarcoma. It began to suck. In this way, a single tentacle could absorb 50 sarcomas at the same time. Then, another 49 tentacles stretched out from the sea dragon clone's body. The absorption efficiency instantly reached 50 times that of before. Before this, Emosure was still thinking about how big the entire Mariana Trench mother nest was. There were so many sarcomas inside. If he really wanted to absorb all of them, it would probably take 3 to 5 months. Now, this skill came at the right time. With one skill, the efficiency increased to 50 times. According to this, it would probably be finished in 3 to 5 days. The truth was just as Emosure expected. In this way, it only took 4 days for the entire Mariana Trench to be completely devoured. In the entire Mariana Trench, all the sarcomas were completely devoured by the sea dragon clone. The pool of blood in the broodmother's nest had already begun to fade. The thick Sanguisurincus around the mother nest had all withered. It was also at this moment that a tearing pain suddenly came from within the sea dragon clone's body. Emosure felt this trace of pain and immediately switched his consciousness back to his main body. He waited for 10 minutes before coming back. He checked the attributes. Species, Sea Dragon, Level 10 Dire Beast, Ability, Evolution by Devouring, Dragon Psychic Attack, Immunity to Sonic Attacks, Myriad Sanguisurincus, Myriad Tentacles. Sure enough, it had advanced to level 10. At this point, Emosure could be considered to have completed a small goal. If the Flaming Land sent more hunters or psychic masters, Emosure wouldn't have to do anything at all. The sea dragon clone would be able to crush them directly. And the next goal was to improve his strength. Now Emosure had to find a suitable opportunity to break through to the level of a hunter. The sea dragon clone was limited by his realm and could only be stuck as a level 10 dire beast. Emosure was thinking that if he signed in at the dragon ruins under the Bermuda Triangle, it might be possible to break through the limit. At that time, he would become a hunter and the sea dragon clone would become a strong dire beast. Wouldn't that be perfect? But just as Emosure was about to set off for the Atlantic Ocean, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Then he controlled the sea dragon clone and swam into the personal reservoir. The next moment, his consciousness had returned to base C1. The personal reservoir had a special feature: if it was summoned by Emosure's main body, it could be summoned anywhere. If it was summoned by the sea dragon clone, it could only be summoned at the place where it disappeared. Therefore, Emosure let the sea dragon clone swim into the personal reservoir. Then he took a step. His figure instantly disappeared, leaving only a 100-meter-tall dragon phantom in place. At the same time, next to the blood waterfall in the Death Valley of the South Pole. More than 2,000 blue and white light balls suddenly appeared. Emosher's virus clone had been guarding here the whole time. He watched these blue and white light balls slowly condense into human figures, but he didn't run away in fear. Instead, he followed Emosher's instructions and stared at these slowly appearing human figures. At the same time, his eyes were blood red. He had already opened the blood demon's eye. Soon, when those people's figures were completely condensed, all of their levels had already been seen by the virus doppelganger. The strongest one was a level 8 hunter. Then there were a few level 7 hunters. There was also a level 6 psychic. The remaining 2,000 people were basically all hunters below level 5. And among them, there was a cheetah-shaped mecha that was more than 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. The entire mecha was made of a metal that didn't exist on Earth. Its body was full of mechanical and power. The sharp claws at the end of its limbs were made of a metal unique to the flaming origin continent. It was extremely sharp. Its sharp teeth glinted coldly under the sunlight. Its tail was also full of sharp blades. Chapter 216. The cheetah mecha cover was filled with a sense of machinery and power. Disregarding everything else, just this steel body alone was made for battle. Mechas were extremely expensive on the Flaming Dawn continent. The Sandstorm mercenary group had more than 30,000 people, but they only had one mecha. And now, he was looking for his brother-in-law, so Shachi brought this mecha over. It was obvious how much he valued his wife. As soon as these people appeared, they naturally saw Emosher's virus clone. Bertha, who had an exaggerated figure, saw Emosher's virus clone and her eyes immediately turned cold. She hurriedly used her telekinesis to drag the virus clone up. She directly grabbed it in front of her. A murderous aura appeared between her eyebrows. Her voice was as cold as iron. "Speak, did you see my brother?" The virus clone didn't speak. A cold light flashed in Bertha's eyes. She used her telekinesis. Rip, the sound of cloth being torn was heard. The virus clone was directly torn into several pieces. 2 drops of blood splashed on her delicate face. She didn't wipe it away. Instead, she reached out and wiped a drop of blood. She stuck out her tongue and sucked the blood on her finger clean. She was like a child who had just eaten a snack and was sucking her finger. The entire mercenary group saw this scene and were all speechless. Who was the most ruthless in the entire mercenary group? There was only one answer in everyone's mind: the leader's wife. If anyone thought that the leader's wife Bertha was just a beautiful and sexy woman with a hot body, then they were completely wrong. She had a ruthless personality that was a great contrast to her appearance. Her gentleness and sweetness were only reserved for the leader. And the leader Shachi also doted on his woman. At this moment, he tucked a strand of hair in front of Bertha's eyes behind her ear. With a gentle smile on his face, he asked, "What does this blood taste like?" Bertha's pretty face was slightly red as she said shyly, "The smell of the natives." Then she said with some anticipation, "In the Flaming Continent, you always told me not to kill people casually. I listened to you. Now that we're here, we can finally kill people, right?" Shachi caressed her hair lovingly and nodded. "Of course, this is a hunting ground. The natives here are not real people. They are just prey." At this moment, countless tentacles grew out from the torn body of the virus clone. These tentacles were pulling at a few pieces of flesh, trying to reassemble them. When Bertha saw this, a cruel smile appeared on her face. It's actually an infected body. In the next moment, her psychokinesis exploded in full force and blasted towards the pile of flesh. Soon, the virus in the pile of flesh was killed. He had lost the ability to heal himself. Then, Shachi said to a captain behind him, "Launch the drone." The captain nodded, then said to a man with a belt around his waist, "Drone lift off." The man nodded and pressed a button on his waist. The next moment, a light blue virtual interface popped out from his belt and a light blue virtual keyboard with the same light blue virtual keyboard popped out. Then, his fingers danced quickly on the keyboard. Hundreds of fist-sized cabins popped out from the body of the cheetah mech. In these cabins, there were fist-sized drones that looked like spiders but had wings. They flapped their wings at an extremely fast frequency and rose into the air. Then they flew in all directions. Then, the cheetah mech that had been motionless. Its eyes suddenly glowed with a faint green light. Its head turned 360 degrees. Then it stretched its limbs. Then it swung its tail. In the next moment, it jumped out. One step covered more than 50 meters. In a few leaps, it disappeared into the distant Death Valley. Shachi looked at this scene and patted the shoulder of the young man operating the mech. Good job, kid. You're getting better and better. One person operating 100 drones and a mech, and you're still so skillful. You're a genius. The young man's waving hands suddenly stopped. He hurriedly said in fear, "Thank you for the compliment, Captain. Practice makes perfect." Shachi nodded. Then he said to the woman with an exaggerated figure, "Bertha. No one visits the first hunting ground. Father-in-law's mind is not on the hunting ground, and no one takes care of it. It has been developed freely for decades without even a map. We can only rely on these drones to find underlings." Bertha nodded obediently. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Half an hour later. At the edge of Antarctica. Mo Shi's figure stopped. He faced the south. There was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. Just now, he had already known the strength of these people through the detection of the virus clone. The strongest was a level 8 hunter and several level 7 hunters. There was also a level 6 psychic master. There was also a cheetah mech. He had already known how terrifying mechs were on the flaming land through the memories of the people he had killed before. The mech had an energy shield that could resist almost any physical, psychic, and energy attack. And the mech could shoot out energy rays. The power of this energy ray was exactly the same as the rays fired by the energy weapons of the hunters. And even if the hunters reached level 10, they could only use the energy weapon 10 times. And as long as the mech's battery was still charged, it could keep using the energy weapon. It was no exaggeration to say that having a mech was equivalent to having a great hunter. Of course, the mech also had its fatal weakness. That was the person who controlled it. As long as the controller was killed, the mech would lose control. So Mo Shi's dragons will scanned more than 100 kilometers away. After the cheetah mech jumped over, he did not pay attention to it. At this moment, in the sky, a fist-sized drone was flying over his head. This beast-shaped drone was more advanced than the ball-shaped drone last time. The beast-shaped drone could not only be used for searching, but also for fighting. Its 8 legs were extremely sharp and could easily pierce through a human skull. At the same time, its compound eyes could also shoot lasers. Although this laser was not as lethal as energy weapons, it could easily kill a level 1 hunter. At the same time, Mo Shi also knew that the surface of this drone could also generate an energy shield. It could resist any form of psychic, energy, and physical attacks. Even a small drone was so powerful. One could imagine how strong the flaming land was. Mo Shi held his breath and focused. His clothes and skin had completely turned into the same color as the snow on the ground. At the same time, he buried himself deep in the snow to avoid the drone's search and thermal imaging. Chapter 217. Mo Shi detected a spider drone flying over his head. He did not attack. After a while, another spider drone flew over his head. His dragon will spread out quickly. In an instant, he detected the location of the 2,500 people across 130 kilometers. Bertha immediately sensed it when he probed with his draconic will. She frowned and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Someone is spying on us with telekinesis. As she spoke, her telekinesis also spread out quickly to resist Mo Shi's dragon will. However, Mo Shi's dragon will did not come into direct contact with her telekinesis at all. Instead, it blasted towards the young man operating the mech. Bang! The young man's body instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Everyone around was shocked. The captain beside him quickly shouted, "Little Jian, take over his mech." Since the mech was so important, it was naturally impossible for it to have only one operator. There were two substitutes beside him. If one died, the other two could replace him at any time. At the same time, Bertha, who had a ridiculously good figure, quickly spread out her telekinesis. She wanted to compete with Mo Shi's telekinesis. However, when she probed, her psychokinesis hit nothing but air. The next moment, her brows suddenly furrowed into a knot. He raised his head abruptly and channeled all of his mental power to resist the attack. However, it was too late. Boom 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 boom, around them, 100 invisible meteors smashed down with a loud rumble. Most of these people were level 3 to level 5 hunters. They also felt that the situation was not good. As they activated their genetic weapons, they all jumped in all directions to dodge. The guy who was about to take over the mech was hit on the head by the dragon wool meteorite. He was instantly smashed into meat paste. Boom 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 boom, explosions kept coming from all directions. Huge craters kept appearing. Terrifying shockwaves continued to spread out. Even though Bertha had blocked most of the dragon wool meteorites, there were still more than 20 meteorites that came crashing down. Almost all of these 2,500 people were sent flying by the huge impact. In this wave of attack, more than 10 telekinesis grandmasters were directly torn to shreds by the huge shock wave. As for the remaining 5 psychic grandmasters, including Bertha, they all had powerful life-saving trump cards. The instant the shockwave hit, a layer of armor covered the surface of these telekinesis grandmasters' bodies. Only then would he not be torn apart. Of course, there were those who were too lucky and were directly smashed in the head by the dragon wool meteorite. Even if they had armor, they were already dead. As for those level 1 hunters, more than 100 of them died on the spot. The rest of the scavengers below level 3 were either seriously or lightly injured. Hunters above level 3 had extremely fast reflexes, and their bodies were extremely strong. Therefore, the shockwave did not tear their bodies apart. What was even more terrifying was that a dragon wool meteorite had already smashed into a level 7 hunter's head. However, the hunter did not suffer any other injuries except that his body was smashed into the ground and his head was dripping with blood. He could even move and fight normally. Mo Shi was secretly shocked when he saw all this. The physical strength of the scavengers was too abnormal. At this moment, the mercenaries from the flaming beginning continent were even more shocked than Mo Shi. In their opinion, the first hunting ground was simply a barren land. Moreover, due to the rules of the hunting ground, it was impossible for a level 10 great hunter to appear. It was even more impossible for a telekinesis grandmaster to appear. However, the attack just now was clearly the work of a telekinesis grandmaster. It was very likely that the attacker was a level 6 telekinesis grandmaster. How was this possible? The leader, Sha Qi, was even more shocked and furious. Initially, he had thought that with so many hunters, they would be able to dominate the lousy first hunting ground and sweep through everything in their path. However, he did not expect that they would be ambushed as soon as they arrived. They had lost more than 100 hunters and more than a dozen telekinesis grandmasters. This loss was simply too great. Damn it! Sandstorm Mercenary Group, listen to my orders. Raise this barren land to the ground. He roared in exasperation. It was as if an adult had been slapped by a child in front of everyone. Everyone in the mercenary group was also furious. This barren land, a low-level hunting ground, had caused the Sandstorm Mercenary Group to suffer such a great loss. This was outrageous. The leader shouted to the third substitute mecha operator, Little Hai, operate the mecha. Little Hai's heart suddenly tightened. He wanted to say that he had only been learning from his master for a month. However, when he saw the leader's murderous eyes and the leader's wife's eyes, he trembled. His heart suddenly trembled. He hurriedly replied, "Yes." As he spoke, he untied the belt from his master's waist and wrapped it around his waist. He turned on the virtual keyboard and virtual screen. Then, he tapped a few times on the keyboard and silently opened a document. When the leader saw the title of the document, he almost spat out blood. The title of the document was, Cheetah G35-1 Mecha Manual. Pfft! When the surrounding people saw this, they almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Bertha's heart was already burning with anger. She clearly felt that the opponent's telekinesis was similar to hers, but so many people were killed right under her nose. This made her very unhappy. At this time, she saw Little Hai silently open the manual. He was even more furious than before. She moved her telekinesis. Rip, Little Hai was directly torn into several pieces. Sha-Chi, who was next to her, did not have time to persuade her. He could only helplessly shake his head. At this time, Bertha's telekinesis spread to a radius of 60 kilometers. As a level 6 telekinesis master, her telekinesis could spread to a maximum radius of 60 kilometers, to explore everything around her. She wanted to find the guy who had just used his telekinesis. However, no matter how she searched, even if she searched every stone and every piece of snow in the area, she could not find the person who carried out the attack. At this time, Emosher jumped out of the snow pit where he was hiding. He dusted off the snow and ice on his body and glanced at the blue sky. Those drones had lost control and had already flown away aimlessly. The cheetah mecha had also lost control and was wandering aimlessly on the ice field. Emosher smiled faintly and took a step forward. He instantly disappeared on the spot. Only the next giant dragon shadow was left behind. Not long after, Emosher appeared in the sight of those people from the flaming beginning continent. Their faces all turned cold. Bertha immediately wanted to use her telekinesis to tear Emosher into pieces. However, Sha-Chi next to her stopped her and said, "Maybe this person knows the whereabouts of our little brother. It's not too late to kill him after interrogating him." Only then did Bertha dismiss the idea of directly tearing Emosher into pieces. At the same time, Sha-Chi stared at Emosher with a solemn expression and said to the others, "Everyone, get ready to fight at any time. This person is not simple." Chapter 218. Emosher walked slowly towards the 2,000 people. The 2,000 people did not make a move immediately. But everyone was on high alert, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. When they first arrived at the first hunting ground, they looked down on everything here. In their eyes, coming to the first hunting ground was just a vacation. However, after experiencing the telekinesis meteorite, they were extremely vigilant against this person. After all, this person was likely to be a psychic master above level 6. Emosher came to a place 50 meters away from these people and stood still. Everyone saw that Emosher looked exactly the same as the infected person they had killed before. They were a little confused. Could this guy be a twin? Sha-Chi tapped twice on the watch on his left wrist. The holographic images of a long-haired young man and a bald middle-aged man appeared beside him. He pointed at the two images and asked Emosher, "Have you seen them?" Emosher did not hide and nodded, "Yes." When Bertha heard this, an anxious look appeared in her eyes as she asked, "Where are they?" Emosher's face was calm as he said casually, "Kill him." He said it so casually, as if he had just killed an ant. As soon as he said this, the scene fell silent. The next moment, Bertha's psychokinesis suddenly covered the sky and pressed down on Emosher. "Die for me." A roar full of anger and hatred came from her mouth. Rip, the sound of cloth being torn could be heard. Emosher's body was torn into several pieces. It was even more miserable than the doppelganger beside the blood waterfall. However, this was only Emosher's doppelganger. When he knew that his strength was far inferior to the other party, how could Emosher take the risk? He just let this doppelganger bring his personal reservoir to those people. At this time, the doppelganger had been killed. But a circular hole with a diameter of 50 meters appeared in the air. Everyone looked at the circular hole that suddenly appeared and were a little confused. What is this? Some experienced mercenaries felt their hearts palpitate when they arrived at the entrance of the cave. Not good, quickly disperse. The old mercenary screamed and quickly turned around to flee. However, it was already too late. A figure leaped out from the cave in an instant. He swallowed the old mercenary in one gulp. The old mercenary was a level 3 hunter. He didn't even have time to scream before he was buried in the belly of the figure. At the same time, the figure's body continued to emit crisp sounds. Ka ka ka, accompanied by this sound, the figure rapidly expanded. In the end, it reached a length of 200 meters. At this moment, the figure looked like a crocodile. However, the scales on its body were more solid than those of a crocodile. Its limbs were thicker than a crocodile's. For claws, each as big as a house. Its tail was as thick as a giant python, and it was almost 100 meters long. Moreover, the long tail was triangular. Every edge was an extremely sharp blade. At the sight of this, all the low-level hunters were dumbfounded. This is a desolate beast. How is that possible? How can there be a desolate beast in the first hunting ground? According to the information they had obtained, the strongest mutated beast in the first hunting ground was only a level 10 mutated beast due to the limitations of the rules. How could there be a desolate beast? Moreover, this desolate beast had swallowed a level 3 hunter in one gulp. It was definitely a desolate beast of level 5 or above. As for the high-level hunters who had reached level 5 and above, their expressions changed slightly. However, that was all. Looking at the speed of this desolate beast, it was at most level 5 or so. As hunters of level 5 or above, they didn't have to worry at all. Moreover, there was the leader, a level 8 hunter, and the leader's wife, a level 6 psychic master. Why would they panic? However, in the next moment, they knew how stupid their thoughts were. The speed of this desolate beast was a little slow and couldn't outrun the hunters of level 3 or above. However, the flesh on its body wriggled. In an instant, a sanguisurincus as thick as an arm was shot out. This sanguisurincus shot out like lightning and directly pierced through the body of a level 5 hunter. At the same time, it continued to shoot forward like lightning and pierced through the bodies of more than 10 people in succession. In the next moment, this sanguisurincus exploded into hundreds of tiny sanguisurincus in these people's bodies. They pierced out of these people's bodies. It looked like hundreds of blood-red toothpicks had pierced into a ball of yarn. This time, everyone's expressions changed drastically. Including those level 7 hunters and Sha-Chi who was a level 8 hunter. This desolate beast could actually kill a level 5 hunter in an instant. Its strength was at least level 6 or even higher. Just as they were shocked, 50 sanguisurincus shot out from the surface of the sea dragon clone's body in all directions. Puff, 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 hundreds of people were instantly pierced by these 50 sanguisurincus. Then, they were pierced into hedgehogs by the tiny sanguisurincus that burst out from the sanguisurincus. Then, these sanguisurincus were retracted and a second wave of sanguisurincus was quickly released. 2 waves in a row had taken the lives of more than 300 scavenger hunters. Among them, there was no lack of level 5 hunters. Mo Shi's consciousness controlled the sea dragon clone to continuously shoot out sanguisurincus, harvesting the lives of those people. Although the sea dragon clone's speed was not as fast as those hunters, the speed of the sanguisurincus shot out far exceeded that of those humans. Moreover, these sanguisurincus seemed to have no limit to the distance. Even if some people had already escaped 2 kilometers away, their bodies were still pierced through. None of the hunters could withstand this sanguisurincus attack. Even those who had life-saving trump cards, instantly condensed armor on the surface of their bodies, and used genetic martial arts to resist. In front of this sanguisurincus, at most, they would be delayed by a few seconds. In the end, they would still be pierced through. Even Mo Shi did not expect these sanguisurincus to be so terrifying. Seeing this, the captain's expression was extremely solemn. Was the Sandstorm mercenary group that he had painstakingly built going to be destroyed just like this? He was shocked and angry. He shouted to Bertha next to him, "Try to suppress it with telekinesis." Bertha next to him was shocked. "I'm already trying, but this wild beast seems to be able to use telekinesis, and its telekinesis is on par with mine. My telekinesis can't affect it at all." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was even more shocked in their hearts. A desolate beast with such powerful strength actually possessed the power of thought. What the hell was this? One had to know that telekinesis had appeared in zombies on the flaming land. There were blood breeds with telekinesis. There were also zombies with telekinesis. But there had never been a wild beast with telekinesis. In the midst of his shock, Sha 7 shouted, "All psychokinesis, use telekinesis to suppress it together. All hunters, use energy weapons at the same time." All the scavenger hunters were shocked when they heard this. Chapter 219. All hunters, attack together with your energy weapons. Sha Qi, the captain, commanded. All the hunters felt a chill in their hearts when they heard this. After using their energy weapons, the energy in their bodies would be depleted. If their energy weapons couldn't kill this wild beast, then they could only wait for death. It seemed that the captain was going to risk his life. But there was no other way at this time. They couldn't escape anyway. This wild beast seemed to have the intelligence of a human. The further they ran, the faster they would die. Therefore, the genetic weapons on the right arms of all the remaining 2,000 hunters emitted a scorching red and white light. They turned into energy weapons. The next moment, more than 2,000 red and white lights shot out from their energy weapons. They instantly attacked the sea dragon. Hiss hiss hiss, hiss hiss hiss, hiss hiss hiss, their energy weapons instantly pierced through the defense of the sea dragon clone. Thousands of holes were shot out of the sea dragon clone's body. However, compared to the huge body of the sea dragon clone, these holes caused by energy were not worth mentioning. For the sea dragon, which was more than 200 meters long, it was equivalent to more than 2,000 needles stabbing its body at the same time. Of course, these 2,000 needles were only a little too deep. The sea dragon clone's attack did not stop at all. Every time the Sanguisurincus attacked, it could kill more than 100 people. But at this moment, a ray directly hit the sea dragon's left eye. The sea dragon immediately roared in pain. Roar! Amidst the roar, it suddenly opened its mouth. A stream of green liquid suddenly spurted out. The green liquid fell on the body of an armored scavenger. The armor on the hunter's body was corroded in a very short time like rusty iron pieces and slid off one after another. Then, the flesh on his body kept making sizzling sounds as it was quickly corroded. "Ah, help me," the hunter let out an extremely miserable cry. Just hearing it made one's scalp tingle and their hearts turn cold. The strong acid that the sea dragon clone spat out was much more corrosive than the strong acid of the bloodlust zombie slayer. The hunter's flesh and blood were like melted chocolate, falling down quickly. Eerie white bones were exposed. Then, even the bones were completely melted. Even the ground beneath his feet was corroded, forming a huge bowl-shaped pit with a diameter of more than 10 meters. Moreover, the sea dragon's spray covered a wide area. When it opened its huge mouth, everything within a radius of several hundred meters was covered. Hundreds of hunters within hundreds of meters suddenly screamed and turned into a pool of blood. Even a level 7 hunter had no power to resist. The sea dragon spat out several mouthfuls in a row. More than 500 hunters and psyche masters were turned into a pool of blood in the strong acid. This scene caused everyone to be incomparably terrified. As mercenaries, they had seen many dead people in their lives. However, this was the first time they had seen so many people being corroded to death by strong acid. This was the first time they had seen so many people die at once. And what worried them the most was that they all knew that desolate beasts had the ability to breathe out energy. This was the most powerful killing move of a desolate beast. Up until now, this desolate beast had yet to use its energy breath. It was like a sword hanging over their heads that could fall at any time. Naturally, Mo sure couldn't casually use the energy breath. Although the energy breath was strong, it was the same as the energy weapons of the hunters. Every time it was used, it would be used less. Even the sea dragon clone, a level 10 desolate beast, could only use it 10 times. At this moment, another energy ray directly penetrated the heart of the sea dragon clone. However, this didn't kill the sea dragon clone. Hundreds of tentacles grew out of its heart and sewed it up like needles and threads. And it was more seamless than a needle and thread. However, Mo sure could clearly feel that this time, the tentacles in the sea dragon clone's body sewed up the wound much slower than before. This was because the dozens of Psyche Masters on the other side were using their Psyche power to kill the virus and cells in the sea dragon clone's body at the molecular level. The sea dragon clone's level 3 dragon will was originally equivalent to the Psyche power of a level 6 Psyche Master. However, there were dozens of Psyche Masters on the other side helping. The sea dragon clone's dragon will was a little strenuous. At this moment, the head of the sea dragon clone was pierced by 2 more rays. The tentacles formed by the virus in its body were even more powerless when they were sewn up. Seeing this, Mo sure immediately controlled the sea dragon clone. It opened its mouth abruptly. A blood-red energy pillar was suddenly spat out from its mouth. This energy pillar was more than 100 times thicker than the rays emitted by the hunters. It was more than 2 meters thick in diameter. Furthermore, the energy pillar swept across the area. The energy pillar of the sea dragon clone was unlike the energy rays of the hunters, which could only last for a few seconds at a time. This energy pillar actually lasted for dozens of seconds. It swept left and right, up and down, vertically, and in a circle. The area covered was extremely large and the range was extremely wide. It made it impossible for the hunters to hide. All the hunters who were swept by the energy pillar were almost instantly turned into flying ashes. With just this sweep, more than 500 hunters were killed. After another round of shooting, more than half of the remaining hunters were killed. Now, less than 100 of the 2,500 people were left. Of those great Psyche Masters, only 2 were left. One was Bertha, a level 6 Psyche Master, and the other was a level 3 Psyche Master. It wasn't until now that all the mercenaries realized that they were finished. This dire beast wasn't like the level 5 or level 6 dire beast they had thought before. Even the leader of the level 8 hunters was helpless in front of this dire beast. Then it was at least a level 9 dire beast, or even a level 10 dire beast. In the face of such an existence, no one could deal with it unless the cheetah mech came over. But the 3 people who controlled the cheetah mech were already dead. If that was the case, the rest of them would only die without a doubt. Mo sure was also quite shocked at this time. He knew that the energy attack of the sea dragon clone was powerful, but he didn't expect it to be so powerful. The so-called trump cards and magic treasures of these hunters and psychic masters were completely useless in the face of the energy breath of the sea dragon's clone. If he had known that the energy attack of the sea dragon clone was so powerful, he would have used a big move as soon as he came up. Why bother with Sanguisurincus, strong acid, and the like? Next, he planned to use another energy breath to kill the rest of the people. But at this moment, Long Shachi suddenly raised his hands and shouted, "Let's go! I surrender, all of us surrender." This time, the remaining 100 or so mercenaries were stunned. Bertha was also stunned. In all of their impressions, Shachi had always been a person who would rather die than submit, a person who would rather break than bend. Even if everyone else surrendered, he would never surrender. Why did he take the initiative to surrender before the others? Chapter 220. No one had expected that before the others had surrendered, their commander would be the first to surrender. And no one expected their leader to surrender to a desolate beast. Desolate beasts basically had no intelligence. Did it know how to surrender to it? But what they didn't expect was that after their leader raised his hands and shouted his surrender, this terrifying desolate beast had actually stopped its attack. Shachi heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and explained to everyone. This desolate beast is not as smart as a desolate beast. It's more like a human. Even if it's not that smart, there must be a human controlling it. Everyone understood. It turned out that their leader was surrendering to the human behind the desolate beast. But they still didn't understand. With their leader's unyielding character, how could he surrender? Shachi said to everyone, "Retract your genetic and energy weapons. Quick, don't wait for it to go back on its words." Everyone looked at each other. One by one, they retracted their genetic and energy weapons. Based on the current situation, if they continued to fight, they would probably die in the next second. If they surrendered as their leader said, although the desolate beast might not let them go, at least they would die a slower death. Who wouldn't want to live a few more seconds? Their leader, Shachi, shouted to the sea dragon clone. "I'm the leader of all of them. If you want to kill me alone. Please let my brothers and my woman go." The sea dragon clone didn't move. Shachi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the desolate beast didn't intend to attack again. He turned around and said to everyone, "Every one of you, join my sandstorm mercenary group. You're my brothers. I, Shachi, made a wrong decision and lost the lives of so many of my brothers. I can't bear to see the remaining 100 or so brothers die." Then, he turned around and looked at his woman affectionately. "Bertha, I'm too stupid and caused the death of so many of our brothers. But I can't watch you die for nothing. I'll stay. All of you leave. Now." The remaining 100 or so people in the mercenary group felt their blood boiling. Their leader was willing to give up his life for them. How could they let their leader die for nothing? "Leader, let's fight it. If we die together. When we first joined the mercenary group, we were already brothers. Since we can't survive, we might as well die together." Bertha's tears fell like rain as she sobbed. "Shachi, I'll accompany you. All of our brothers will accompany you." Shachi's eyes were also filled with tears as he reprimanded his brothers. "Shut up. You are all people with parents and families. If you die here, who will your parents and wives depend on in the future? If I can use my life to exchange for all of your lives, as the regiment commander, I will not shirk my duty." He then turned around and said to Bertha, who had an exaggerated figure, "Bertha, don't think about me when you go back. Find a good man and marry him." As he spoke, his own voice was choked with emotions. He hugged Bertha tightly, as if he didn't want to leave her again. Bertha's tears fell like rain. "Shachi, no. If you die, how can I live alone?" "Shachi, we agreed to die together." However, before she could finish her sentence, she stopped abruptly. Rip, her body was torn into 2 halves. And the person who tore her body apart was none other than someone else. It was her husband, her lover, Shachi. This sudden change occurred. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their minds were a little jammed, and they couldn't react in time. Even Mo was shocked. Previously, Shachi had said that he wanted to surrender and let them go, and that he would die alone. Mo naturally didn't believe these words. He had been guarding against Shachi. If he dared to make a sudden move, Mo would be able to turn him into ashes in an instant. However, Mo had never expected that Shachi would suddenly attack and kill his beautiful wife under such circumstances. What kind of F***king plot was this? Just as everyone was still in a daze, Shachi swung his hands again. His wife, who had been torn into 2 halves, was torn into pieces again. His expression was ferocious, and a genetic weapon suddenly appeared on his right arm. Then, a red and white light shone from the genetic weapon, and it transformed into an energy weapon. The next moment, a red and white light suddenly shot out from the energy weapon. It instantly shot towards the more than 100 mercenaries. Bang! A single sweep of the gun had killed more than 20 wild hunters. Bang! With another sweep of the gun, more than 20 hunters were directly shot into 2. The remaining mercenaries only reacted at this moment. Some quickly turned around and wanted to escape. Some wanted to form a genetic weapon to counterattack. However, their levels were much lower than Shachi's. Moreover, Shachi was scheming against them. It was already too late for them to form a genetic weapon now. Bang, 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 after a few more sweeps, the more than 100 mercenaries all fell to the ground. These mercenaries, including Shachi's wife, Bertha, all had an expression of extreme disbelief on their faces. Even until death, they couldn't believe that their leader, who had always treated them like brothers, would suddenly turn around and kill them. Bertha also couldn't believe that her husband, who had always been obedient to her and spoiled her like a princess, would suddenly turn around and kill her. And his method was so cruel. Previously, everyone thought that Bertha was the most ruthless person in the entire mercenary group. But now, they understood that the most ruthless person in the mercenary group was their leader, Shachi. After Shachi killed those people, he confirmed that none of them were left alive. There was a pleased look on his face. He let out a long sigh and looked up at the sky. Awesome! But a moment later, he knelt down toward the east with tears in his eyes. He knocked his head heavily on the ground and said, "Dad, Mom, Big Brother, I've finally avenged you." As he spoke, his voice was choked with sobs, as if he had returned to several years ago. Then, he told his story to the sea dragon clone. 23 years ago, I was only a 3-month-old child. At that time, my dad was the owner of the first hunting ground. He has a subordinate named Belki who plotted to kill my parents and my brother and took over the first hunting ground. Fortunately, my father's guard at that time risked his life to bring me out of the encirclement. Later on, I gradually grew up and founded the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. It's all so that one day, I can fight my way to the first hunting island, avenge my parents and elder brother, and take back the first hunting ground. It was only later that I discovered that Bertzi's daughter, Bertha, was actually a psychic grandmaster. It wasn't easy to kill them. So I could only take the opportunity to get close to Bertha and finally married her. I planned to find an opportunity to kill their entire family for revenge. But if I did it casually, it was likely that someone would find out. This time, coming to the first hunting ground gave me the opportunity to kill Bertha first. Once Bertha is dead, I will have a greater chance to kill Bertzi and his wife when I go back. At this point, Shachi wiped his eyes and said to the sea dragon clone, "Sir, please give me a chance to take revenge. After I've taken my revenge, I'll come back and be at your disposal." Chapter 221. After Shachi said these words, he lowered his head and looked very sincere. He did not dare to resist. For such a person, according to Emosher's personality, he would not hesitate to kill him. Although this person had a blood feud, so it was understandable. But to be able to endure for so long, betraying his brother and tearing apart his wife. Emosher would not let such a person go easily. But today was different. Emosher's main body rushed over from afar with dragon shadow step. Shachi saw another person that looked exactly the same as the previous 2 infected people running over. He felt strange in his heart. Just how many of these infected bodies were there? But he already knew that this wild beast was definitely controlled by this infected person. He quickly said to Emosher, "Please allow me to go back and take revenge. I swear on my energy weapon, if I say half a lie, I will die from the backlash of my energy weapon." Emosher coldly snorted in his heart. "Swear on your energy weapon. Swear on your sister." Emosher had absorbed the memories of those people and knew that swearing on energy weapons was very common in the Flaming Origin continent. But swearing this thing was just nonsense. Whoever believed in such a thing was an idiot. How many couples vowed to love each other, but didn't they part ways in the end? Shachi saw that Emosher didn't say anything, so he secretly tried to guess Emosher's meaning. Emosher's expression did not change. He said in his mind, "System, designate the reward, Virus 0. The system quickly responded, "Frowny face designation of reward requires 1 million evolution points. The reward, Virus 0, requires 10 billion evolution points. This time, sign-in will consume 10 billion and 1 million evolution points. Are you sure you want to sign in?" "Puff, Immortal almost spurted out a mouthful of blood. If he knew this would happen, he would not have wasted the virus 0 last time. But since it had come to this, he could only grit his teeth and accept it. Yes. Soon, the system prompt sounded in his mind again. Frowny face. Sign in successful. Sign in reward, 1 virus 0. Immortal took a look inside his backpack. Then, he gave it a thought. The virus had already appeared in the palm of his right hand. With the naked eye of a human, it was naturally impossible to see the virus. But Immortal could feel it. He bent the middle finger of his right hand and clasped it with his thumb. He flicked it lightly. The virus 0 had already stuck to Shachi's body. Then, it entered his body through his pores. Shachi naturally didn't know about this, but his heart thumped. What did this gesture mean? Are you letting me go? At this moment, Shachi felt dizzy. Then, he felt a sharp pain in his head. However, that feeling only lasted for a fleeting moment. He was shocked. What the hell? Could it be that this fellow had attacked him? Immortal finally opened his mouth. You can leave now. Shachi suddenly raised his head, his eyes filled with disbelief. Before this, he had killed his own brother and now, he had killed his wife. Firstly, it was for revenge. Secondly, it was to express his sincerity to this expert. He hoped that this expert would let him go. Of course, he knew that the chances were slim. No expert would let him go under such circumstances. Wouldn't that be letting the tiger return to the mountain? But as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he had to try. Even if he failed, it was better than waiting for death. However, he had never expected that this foolish expert would actually believe his words. And he really wanted to let him go. This simply couldn't be described as foolish anymore. Naive, melon, silly, simple-minded, in Shachi's opinion, all the words used to describe fools were not enough to describe this guy's foolishness. Of course, he also thought of another possibility. That was, this expert let him go for another purpose. But after he left here, he would be in the flaming land 30 light years away. What was he after? So he thought about it and ruled out the latter. He felt that this guy was purely stupid. But on the surface, he still pretended to be grateful. He kept thanking him. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Don't worry, after I go back and get my revenge, I'll come back to serve you. I'll be your slave. But at the same time, he thought that the cheetah mech was still wandering outside. After the cheetah mech lost control for 10 minutes, it would change to automatic mode. At that time, as long as it encountered a creature in the first hunting ground, it would start a massacre. Together with those spider drones, it would constantly capture information about all the creatures in the first hunting ground. Then, the cheetah mech would become a terrifying killing machine. As long as the battery was not depleted, it would continue its massacre. And the battery inside the cheetah mech was a super hydrogen battery with a huge capacity. And it could continuously charge with solar energy. So it was almost impossible to wait for the battery to run out. Thinking of this, Shachi was secretly happy. Then, he respectfully bowed to Immortal. Then, I'll go back first. With that, he turned around and carefully walked forward for thousands of meters. Then, he suddenly accelerated and ran in the direction of the blood waterfall. When he arrived at the blood waterfall, he pressed a few buttons on the multifunctional watch on his left wrist. A bluish-white light shot out from the watch and landed on his body. A moment later, he turned into a ball of bluish-white light. He disappeared in an instant. Until now, Immortal only sneered and withdrew his mind. Last time, he had already considered that if he killed the people of the Flaming Land, they would send more and stronger people. So he had already thought of a countermeasure. Just now, he had implanted the virus 0 into Shachi. Although the distance of 30 light years was too far, he was afraid that he could not use the dragon's will to contact the virus and activate it. But he had already implanted a strand of dragon's will into the virus. That strand of dragon's will also contained a trace of Immortal's consciousness. This trace of consciousness only had one use, to detonate the dragon's will after an hour. At this time, he had detected that the guy had left Earth. Mo sure began to flip through that guy's memories. Yes, just now, Mo sure used memory plunder on Shachi. But that guy's body was too strong, so after the plunder, Shachi only felt a sharp pain in his head. Other than that, there was no change. From Shachi's memories, Mo sure understood the flaming land a lot more. At the same time, he also learned about the cheetah mech from that guy's memories. He frowned slightly. This cheetah mech was a bit troublesome. From that guy's memories, he knew that the only way to destroy that mech was to use an attack that far exceeded the strength of its energy shield and destroy it in one blow. But that required at least the level of a desolate hunter. Currently, Mo sure could not do that at all. The other way was to control the keyboard and turn off that guy. Mo sure did not know anything about that, so naturally, he could not turn it off. But soon, Mo sure threw this problem to the back of his mind. Because when he was flipping through this guy's memories, he found a bigger problem. Chapter 222. In the ice and snow of the Antarctic continent. A man and a beast stood in this world of ice and snow. Mo sure furrowed his brows slightly. He didn't pay any attention to the wind and snow that blotted out the sky. He was looking through Shachi's memories, looking for a way to deal with the cheetah mecha. But after a moment, his face suddenly froze. His eyebrows were tightly knitted into a knot. He cursed, F***ck. As he spoke, he instantly withdrew the sea dragon clone. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. All of this was because he had just found out from Shachi's memories that there were more than 2,500 people who came to Earth this time. There were 5,000 people. 5,000 people were divided into two groups and teleported to Earth. But because there were too many people teleported, they used a new coordinate that had never been used before this time. That new coordinate was on Big Goose Tower in Chin Province. The location of Big Goose Tower was not far from Base C1. Moreover, their two coordinates were teleported only 10 minutes apart. As for the other 2,500 people, it was very likely that they were already in Base C1. If he rushed back at this time, even with the speed of Dragon's Shadow Step, it would take more than 20 minutes. It would probably be too late. In fact, it was just as Mo sure thought. Just 10 minutes after he left Base C1. In the sky above Big Goose Tower. More than 2,500 blue and white light balls slowly appeared. Then they turned into human silhouettes. Among these 2,500 people, the strongest ones were two level 7 hunters. They quickly called out the spherical drones and probed around. Not long after, they found Base C1. Immediately, they headed toward Base C1. With the speed of their flying skateboards, they arrived at Base C1 in less than 10 minutes. They floated high above Base C1. They were like a group of gods high above. When the people in Base C1 saw this group of people suddenly appear, they were all at a loss and panicked. Happy was working in the corpse farm. Suddenly, she heard someone shouting outside the wall, "Look up, look up." She quickly looked up. When she saw it, she also panicked. They had seen creatures flapping their wings and floating in the sky. However, they had never seen anyone hovering in the air on a hoverboard. Moreover, with the current technology on Earth, it was impossible for a flying skateboard to appear. At this moment, among the 2,500 mercenaries, the vice captain glanced at the humans below. He sneered disdainfully. Then, he turned on the holographic projection. The long-haired young man and the bald middle-aged man were projected. Looking down from above, he asked like an emperor asking his subjects, "You natives, have you seen these two people before?" Everyone in Base C1 shook their heads. The vice captain snorted coldly. "A bunch of ignorant natives." The other deputy commander continued to ask. "Then do you know who might have seen these two people?" Everyone was exchanging glances with each other. A figure flashed through their minds at the same time. Mr. Mo. In the past few years, Mr. Mo often went outside the base. If there was anyone who was most likely to have seen these two people, it was undoubtedly Mr. Mo. However, they naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to say it out loud. Mr. Mo had done so much for the base, so they only had gratitude for him. These people obviously didn't come with good intentions. If they found Mr. Mo, it wouldn't be good for either the base or Mr. Mo. Therefore, everyone shook their heads. I don't know. I don't know. In the sky, one of the vice-captains saw this and shook his head, cursing. This group of natives is a group of F*King primitive people. They haven't seen anything and they don't know anything. However, another vice-captain smiled and said, Captain, don't be anxious. Captain Chen, don't be anxious. I can tell that these natives are very cunning. Judging from their expressions, they should know something. As he spoke, he waved his hand. Immediately, a psychic master moved his mind power. In an instant, he grabbed two people. Hiss, hiss, two soft sounds of cloth being torn apart. In the splashing of blood, two psychokinesis were directly torn apart. The psychic master commander sneered and asked, Is anyone willing to speak? The faces of the people below changed dramatically. However, no one said anything. Because Mo Sure had saved the base many times, they subconsciously thought that Mo Sure would definitely appear at the critical moment. Hiss, two more people were torn apart. Everyone was terrified. But still, no one said anything. There was a look of surprise in Happy's eyes. In the sky, the psychic master saw that still no one answered and frowned slightly. But then, he relaxed his grip. Good, you have a backbone. I like it. Then from now on, if you don't speak, I will kill one person every second. After I kill 10 people, if you don't speak, I will kill 10 people every second. Then I will kill 100 people every second. In the time that he said these words, two more people were torn apart. The entire C1 base was silent. Only the sound of cloth being torn could be heard continuously. 10 seconds later, 10 people's broken bodies were scattered on the ground. Then, hiss, 10 sounds were heard at the same time. 10 people's bodies were directly torn apart. Hiss, another 10 people's bodies were all torn apart. When everyone saw this scene, they all retreated in horror. But it was useless to retreat. In the face of a psychic master, these hunters, corpse hunters, and psychokinesis had no power to resist at all. They didn't even have a chance to escape. And those people in the sky, some of them had cold expressions. Some of them had bloodthirsty and excited expressions. Some of them had sarcastic expressions. A level 3 psychic master saw the deputy commander constantly tearing apart the natives below. He couldn't help but lick his lips. There was a gulping sound in his throat. Then he moved closer to the commander, laughed, and said, Commander, can I do it? The commander of the psychic master looked at the level 3 psychic master and said with a smile, Why, are you hungry? The level 3 psychic master answered with a smile, I haven't fought for a long time. My hands are a little itchy. The commander of the psychic master nodded. Okay, you do it. The level 3 psychic master immediately said, Thank you, Commander, thank you. As he spoke, he moved his psychic power. Hiss, a sound louder than the previous one was heard. 100 people were torn apart in an instant, even more than the deputy commander. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The scene was too horrible to look at. The deputy commander shook his head. You don't talk about martial ethics. At least 10 of them are enough to kill 100 people, and then 100 of them. If you do this, these natives will think that I don't keep my word. The level 3 psychic master laughed and said, I haven't fought for a long time. I didn't hold the fire for a while, hee hee. As he spoke, he moved his psychic power. Hiss, this time, more than 200 people were torn apart on the spot. Everyone in the base was terrified. The chief of the base had been torn apart just now. And this time, even Little Bean and many of the higher-ups of the hunting group were torn apart. When Happy saw this, his black pupils trembled violently. Chapter 223. The people in the sky were so cruel that everyone in the base was afraid and angry. Those who dared to stand up and resist were torn apart by them immediately. At first, Happy was terrified and a little angry. Her first reaction was to wait for Brother Mo to come back. But gradually, as those people killed more and more people, the anger in Happy's heart grew. And she also thought of one thing. She couldn't rely on Brother Mo for everything. There would always be times when Brother Mo wasn't at the base. In her anger, her gaze kept trembling. Hiss, hundreds of sounds of people being torn apart rang out again. This time, it was very close to her heart. It was right in front of Happy. She watched as a pregnant woman in front of her was torn apart. A baby who was still in swaddling clothes was torn apart. Blood splattered on her face, and pieces of flesh splattered on her body. At this moment, everything around her seemed to be right in front of her eyes in her perception. She could clearly sense the fear on people's faces. She could clearly sense the fear in everyone's hearts. She could clearly sense the indifferent expressions on the faces of those people in the sky. She could clearly sense the hideous smile on the face of the level 3 psychic master. These people in the sky were not human at all. They were animals. They were demons. They were executioners who killed people like flies. Because of extreme anger, Happy's body was trembling. She watched as the familiar people around her were torn to pieces just like that. Xiaodou was torn to pieces. The leader of the corpse farm was torn to pieces. The leader of the base who took care of her was torn to pieces. Happy's eyes gradually turned black. There was no white in her eyes, but all of them turned black. Black like an abyss. Black like a black hole in the universe. In the sky, there was still a cruel and perverted smile on the face of the level 3 psychic master. He wanted to continue tearing these ant-like humans into pieces. At this moment, Happy seemed to have become a different person. Her entire body seemed to have an endless, mysterious, and terrifying aura of death. She suddenly raised her head and stared at the level 3 psychic master with a pair of black hole-like eyes. She opened her mouth and for the first time in her life, she said, "Die." In the next moment, a crack suddenly appeared on the surface of the level 3 psychic master's body. Then, a second, third, and fourth crack appeared. Soon, the surface of his body was covered with cracks like porcelain. Then, the surface of his body turned into a muddy yellow color. Being blown by the wind, his entire body actually turned into brownish-yellow fragments, flying away like pieces of paper. Even his clothes, hoverboard, and earrings were reduced to dust. When the people on the ground saw this, the fear and anger on their faces instantly disappeared. What replaced it was shock, astonishment, and disbelief. In the sky, those people who were originally disdainful, cold, and mocking were all stunned at this moment. Soon, someone reacted. "She's a great psychic master. Kill her. Quick." The leader of the level 5 psychic master team moved immediately. He looked at Happy with a cold gaze. His psychokinesis was about to tear Happy into pieces. But when he used his telekinesis on Happy, it was completely useless. No matter how much psychokinesis he used, Happy did not seem to be attacked at all. The level 5 psychic master was shocked. His expression suddenly changed. "Not good, she's at least a level 6 psychic master." At this moment, Happy's eyes, which were as deep as the abyss, were already fixed on the level 5 psychic master. The second word in his life came out of his mouth. "Die." Countless cracks immediately appeared on the body of the level 5 psychic master. His body also turned into a khaki color. When the wind blew, his entire body turned into khaki fragments and scattered like paper. The rest of the mercenaries heard that this woman might actually be a level 6 psychic master, or even higher than level 6. Everyone's expression turned cold. But the leader of the level 7 Hunter Vice team showed a ruthless expression at this moment. A level 6 psychic master was very strong. But he couldn't do anything to a level 7 hunter. The psychokinesis of a level 6 psychic master couldn't tear open the body of a level 7 hunter. The psychokinesis of a level 6 psychic master couldn't resist the power of a level 7 hunter. Especially when the level 7 hunter used an energy weapon, the level 6 psychic master could only be killed. Thinking of this, a ferocious expression appeared on his face. Rip, he tore open the sleeve of his right arm. The mechanical arm inside was revealed. At the same time, the skin and flesh of his right shoulder condensed into cuticle, wrapping the entire mechanical arm. The entire mechanical arm quickly lit up with a fiery red light. The next moment, the fiery red light on his genetic weapon quickly turned into a reddish-white color. It seemed to be even hotter. Whoosh, a reddish-white energy ray was instantly shot out. It instantly hit the center of Happy's eyebrows. However, the next moment, a scene that frightened all the mercenaries happened. The energy ray of a level 7 hunter could cut open the body of any living creature. Even desolate hunters, or even great desolate hunters, would be injured by the energy rays. But now, after hitting the center of Happy's eyebrows, it didn't pierce through at all. Not even a faint trace was left behind. What kind of monster was this? At this moment, Happy's gaze turned to the level 7 hunter's team leader. His pitch-black eyes were like an abyss, like the gaze of the Grim Reaper from hell. The third word in his life came out from his mouth. Die. The level 7 hunter immediately became like the two psychokinesis from before. His body was quickly covered with cracks. His skin turned into a khaki color. When the wind blew, it turned into paper-like fragments and flew away. The clothes and equipment on his body also turned into fragments. In the sky, when everyone saw this scene, they were all horrified. On the ground, everyone who saw this scene was dumbfounded. They had always thought that Happy was just a mute girl. A normal person. But today, not only did she open her mouth to speak, she also displayed such a shocking ability. Other people's attacks were completely ineffective against her. And as long as she opened her mouth and said the word, die, the other party would turn into ashes. Such a terrifying ability was too much of a contrast with her appearance. It was simply unbelievable. In the sky, those people no longer dared to attack Happy in their fear. Instead, they turned around and fled. Their flying skateboards were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the person who fled the fastest had already fled 5 kilometers away. Happy's pitch-black eyes stared at the person 5 kilometers away. A cold voice, like that of the Grim Reaper, came from Happy's mouth. Die. Countless cracks instantly appeared on the body of the person 5 kilometers away. He also turned into ashes. Chapter 224. The person 5 kilometers away quickly turned into ashes when Happy said the word, die. Then, Happy looked at the psychic grandmaster who had fled the furthest 3 kilometers away. Die. The psychic grandmaster was also turned into ashes. Then, the 3 mercenaries 2 kilometers away were also turned into ashes. In a short 30 seconds, 15 people were turned into ashes. The faster he ran, the faster he would die. This caused the remaining mercenaries to be greatly shaken. They were scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to move at all. Meanwhile, everyone on the ground was completely stunned at this moment. Even if Happy was dealing with the people in the sky. Whoever he ordered to die would die. He ignored the opponent's level and ability. Such a terrifying ability was like the god of death in their eyes. In addition, her eyes, which had no white in them and were as black as a black hole, made everyone who looked at her feel extreme fear. Her eyes were too terrifying. As long as they looked at each other, they would feel that they would never forget those eyes in their lives. It was as if those eyes had grown in their hearts. No matter where they went in the future, those eyes would stare at them. Until the end of their lives. That was the real gaze of death. At that moment, Happy didn't continue to speak. His eyes, which were like black holes, stared at the 2,000 people in the sky. Those 2,000 people didn't dare to move at all. Even if their skin was itchy, they didn't dare to scratch it. Even if they blinked, their hearts would tremble in fear. They were afraid that if their movements were too big, they would attract the attention of the terrifying woman below. Then, the word, die, came out of his mouth. They would be turned into ashes. Under such high pressure, cold sweat dripped down their foreheads. They felt that the string in their bodies was about to break. It was under such high pressure that someone suddenly remembered a legend in the flaming continent. He couldn't help but widen his eyes in fear and stutter. This is the legendary God. God's oracle. Hearing his words, the other two also remembered the legend. That was just a legend that they would occasionally see in some magazines or in some supernatural novels. Legend had it that in ancient times, there was a person who had two terrifying abilities. The first ability was absolute defense. In other words, he could ignore all attacks. Telekinesis, energy, and physical attacks, any attack that landed on his body would not cause him any harm. Even if the strongest attack in the universe landed on his body, it would not cause him any harm. Second ability, absolute destruction. If he wanted to destroy someone or anything, he only had to say the word, die, and that thing would be destroyed. No matter how sturdy something was, it wouldn't be able to withstand a single death from him. These two abilities were completely above any law of the universe. Even a god was nothing more than an ant in front of a heaven's oracle. The words spoken by the heaven's oracle were like the will of the heavens. That was why he was called the Oracle of Heaven. There was an old saying on the flaming dawn continent, if the heavens want you dead, you have to die. Being a heaven's oracle was a mistake made by the Creator. Some people joked that when the Creator was at work, he took a nap, and the oracle was born. Of course, everyone knew that this was just a myth. Just like Nuwa on Earth created humans and Kwafu chased after the sun. However, what they saw today was exactly the same as the legendary Heaven's Oracle. She ignored telekinesis attacks, ignored energy attacks, and had absolute defense. If she wanted someone to die, she only had to say the word, die, and that person would die. An unreasonable attack. An unreasonable defense. It was completely above any law of the universe. Of course, the Oracle of Heaven in their myths could destroy an entire galaxy with a single word. The woman in front of them was clearly far inferior to the terrifying Oracle of Heaven in the myths. But no matter how far inferior she was still an oracle. And who knew if she had used her full strength? In fear, these people floated in the sky motionlessly. They didn't dare to run far, nor did they dare to land. They just floated quietly. At this moment, Happy didn't speak anymore. At the same time, Emosure had just left Antarctica. He was burning with anxiety. He had already ordered the clone in Huaxia to rush to base C1. However, the clone's strength was clearly far from enough to stop the 2,500 mercenaries. He had to rush back as soon as possible. The sooner the better. With this mentality, he displayed the small success dragon shadow step to the extreme. One step, 10 kilometers. Another step, still 10 kilometers. And it was no longer one step per second. Instead, it was continuous. He could run several steps per second. In other words, he could reach dozens of kilometers per second. But even so, he still felt that it was too slow. At this speed, it would be too late if he rushed back. While his heart was burning with anxiety, he did his best to execute the dragon shadow step. At a certain moment, he took a step forward. His figure instantly disappeared. There was actually 1,000-meter-tall dragon shadow left on the spot. In the next moment, his figure instantly appeared 100 kilometers away. One step, 100 kilometers. Dragon shadow step, great mastery. The small mastery of the dragon shadow step looked like teleportation, but it was actually running. One step, 10 kilometers, and it was running. And the great mastery of the dragon shadow step was teleportation in the true sense. Mo sure didn't know the principle behind it. But after Xiaolong's dragon shadow step reached the extreme, it seemed to naturally be able to teleport. It was like a lot of drivers. They didn't know the principle of a car, but they knew how to drive. Great mastery of the dragon shadow step, 1 step, 100 kilometers. A distance of more than 10,000 kilometers was only 100 steps. At a certain moment, in the quiet C1 base, a figure suddenly appeared without warning. It was Immortal. Everyone in the base saw Immortal appear. One by one, they heaved a sigh of relief. Their hearts became more at ease. As long as Immortal was around, there was no problem that he couldn't solve. When the people in the sky saw Immortal appear, they were all shocked. Even in the flaming land, no one could teleport like this. What was the background of this person? But Immortal didn't have time to care about anyone at this moment. Dragons will instantly swept across the base. He quickly found Happy's position. But when he saw Happy, he frowned. At that moment, Happy no longer had the infectious smile on his face that had always been on his face. Instead, his face was cold. There was no white in his eyes. Those pitch-black eyes were like 2 black holes. Even Immortal felt a chill in his heart when he saw it. He teleported again and arrived beside Happy. Happy! Immortal called out nervously. Chapter 225. Happy! Immortal called out nervously. However, Happy did not respond. Happy? Immortal quickly grabbed Happy's hand. Her hand was cold. In the next moment, Happy seemed to be unable to hold on any longer. She collapsed weakly in Immortal's arms. Immortal's heart tightened again. The dragons will quickly probed Happy's body. He saw that Happy's body was normal. Immortal knitted his brows tightly. If her body was normal, why did her eyes become like black holes? Why didn't she respond when he called her? And her hands were so cold. He quickly activated the blood dragon's eye. His eyes were blood red. He looked at Happy. He wanted to see through the surface to see what was wrong with Happy. Species, human, level 1 oracle, ability, absolute destruction. When Immortal saw this, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Happy's oracle had finally awakened. As for this ability, absolute destruction. Seeing this, Immortal was slightly stunned. What kind of ability was this? But no matter what, as long as Happy was fine, it was fine. At the same time, the 2,500 people in the sky saw that the oracle had fallen. They all heaved a sigh of relief. When the other 2 captains who had reached level 6 saw this, they looked at each other. One of them called out, "Great Psychic, tear that oracle apart first." When the few great psychic masters heard this, they also came to their senses. This Heaven's oracle was the biggest problem. If they killed her first, the rest of the people would be ants in front of them. Thinking of this, the psychic power of the 5 level 2 psychic masters attacked Happy at the same time. Immortal was carefully handing Happy to a female hunter beside him. Suddenly, he sensed 5 huge waves of psychokinesis coming at him. The anger in his heart was like a monstrous wave. A dragon had a reverse scale, and those who touched it would die. Happy was Immortal's reverse scale. He split out a strand of dragon's will to protect Happy. Then, the remaining dragon's will bombarded the 5 psychic masters. Bang 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 bang, almost in an instant, the 5 great psyche masters all exploded into a bloody mist. The remaining level 1 psychics who were about to attack immediately retracted their draconic wills in fear. One of the psyche grandmasters pointed at Immortal and screamed in horror. "Oh no, he's a psychic master." When the 2 groups of 500 people saw this, they were all shocked. How could there be other psychic masters here? At this time, a level 5 hunter heard the order and rushed towards Immortal. He's a psychic master, but his body is only that of an ordinary person. Everyone, charge! Close in and kill him. Therefore, the 2,400 wasteland hunters attacked Immortal at the same time. All of them knew that the best way to deal with a great Psyche Master was to get close. In close combat, a Psychic Grandmaster was no different from an ordinary person. However, at this moment, Mo Shi's right arm quickly transformed into a 3-meter-long battle axe. At this moment, the shape of the battle axe was different from his original genetic weapon. The battle axe was double-edged. The double-edged edges looked like the wings of a giant dragon. The center part looked like the body of a giant dragon. The top part of the axe looked like the head of a giant dragon. The handle of the axe Mo Shi was holding was the tail of a giant dragon. From the front, it was also in the shape of a giant dragon. From the back, it was also in the shape of a giant dragon. Fire Dragon Battle Axe. At the same time, the blood-red energy stored on Mo Shi's back flowed along his arm and into the Fire Dragon Battle Axe. The eyes of the Fire Dragon Battle Axe suddenly lit up with a blood-red glow. In the next moment, Mo Shi waved the Fire Dragon Battle Axe. The double-edged edges of the battle axe also lit up with a blood-red glow. It looked like a blood-red fan-shaped trajectory. This fan-shaped trajectory was 1,000 meters long and 300 meters wide. The moment the genetic and energy weapons of the surrounding hunters that were charging towards Mo Shi came into contact with the blood-red trajectory of Mo Shi's Fire Dragon Battle Axe, all of them were severed. At the same time, their bodies were also cut in half by the blood-red energy. With just one swing of the axe, over 100 hunters were cut in half along with their genetic weapons. Among them, there was no lack of level 5 hunters. Last time, when Mo Shi fought against a level 5 hunter, he had to use the giant axe twice to kill him. But this time, the upgraded Flame Dragon Battle Axe easily split more than 100 hunters into 2 halves with just one blow. This was the power of the Fire Dragon Battle Axe. Seeing this, the rest of the hunters were all shocked. How was this possible? Wasn't this guy a Psychic Grandmaster? How did he become a hunter? No, he wasn't a hunter. The energy weapons used by hunters could only shoot out energy rays at most. Only the energy weapons used by hunters could shoot out such a huge energy blade. This guy was actually a hunter. All the hunters and Psychic Grandmasters felt like they had been F***ed. Not only was he a Psychic Grandmaster, but he was also a hunter. It was impossible for such a person to be unknown in the Flaming Land. They were all powerful existences that ruled over a region. How come they had never heard of this guy before? Moreover, there was no need for such a person to come to a broken place like the first hunting ground to train, right? If they wanted to go, shouldn't they at least go to ancient places like the Dragon Burial Valley and the Falling Dragon Sea to train? Mo Shi did not give them any chance to react. He stood on the ground and did not even move a single step. He swung the Fire Dragon Battle Axe in his hand continuously. In the sky, the hunters and Psychokinesis did not even have a chance to escape under such an attack. They were all cut in half along with their genetic weapons. In just a few swings of the axe, 700 to 800 people died under the axe. When the remaining 1,000 or so people saw that this person was actually a hunter, they were all scared out of their wits and turned to escape. However, could they escape? Mo Shi's dragon will swept across and everyone fell from the sky directly to the ground. Moreover, they smashed heavily on the ground. The ground was smashed to the point that cracks appeared continuously. Some people's heads even fell directly to the ground. At this point, all the mercenaries had completely lost the thought of resisting. They were facing a Psychic Grandmaster, and a hunter at that. Even if they resisted, only death awaited them. Lord Hunter, we were wrong, we were wrong. Please spare our lives. Lord Desolate Hunter, we have offended Lord Heaven's messenger and you. We only ask that you be magnanimous and let us go like farts. They were filled with regret. If they had known this would happen, they would not have dared to come to the first hunting ground no matter how much money they were offered. Some of them were originally resting. However, when they heard that the reward for this mission was much higher than before, they immediately ended their vacation and rushed over. Now, it seemed that their decision was very stupid. If they had known this would happen, they would not have dared to come to the first hunting ground. Emosure did not have the slightest bit of pity for these people who were begging for mercy. His dragon will swept across and plundered a few people's memories. Then, the fire dragon battle axe swept across. Swish, all the 1,000 or so people were cut in half. Now they knew they were wrong. It was too late. Chapter 226. Of the 2,500 people, only a dozen or so had been killed by him. The rest had all been killed by Emosure. As a level 10 great hunter, he was able to kill 2,500 psychic masters and hunters. This was simply unimaginable on the Flaming Continent. Of course, Emosure had the bonus of dragon will. But on the Flaming Continent, even if he cultivated both psychic power and hunters, he could at most kill 1 or 2 psychic masters and hunters. Emosure had killed nearly 2,500 people who were of a higher realm than him, and there was no lack of level 5 hunters among them. And all of this was thanks to the Flame Dragon Battle Axe. On the Flaming Continent, only hunters and above could release such a large amount of energy attacks. But now, Emosure had the Flame Dragon Battle Axe. As a level 10 great hunter, he could release such a large amount of energy attacks. This was too much of an exaggeration. Of course, the Flame Dragon Battle Axe was powerful, but it also consumed a lot of energy. After swinging it a few times, Emosure could clearly feel that more than half of the energy on his back had been used up. If he swung it a few more times, the energy would probably be completely used up. At this time, Emosure put away the Flame Dragon Battle Axe. He took Happy from the woman beside him. Before he left, he said to the Hunter Division leader, Guojutao, "Take off their equipment, study it, and choose 2,500 people to equip them." At this time, in the base chief was already dead. The staff officer was also dead. The only person in charge now was Guojutao. When Guojutao heard Emosure's words, he quickly nodded. "Don't worry, Mr. Emo. We'll do as you say." In the entire base, only a few people dared to be like Guojutao and call Emosure you instead of you. It wasn't that Guojutao didn't respect Emosure. He had known Emosure for a long time. He just felt that he used to call Emosure you. If he called him you now, it would create a sense of distance. At the same time, he asked again. Mr. Emo, how is Happy? Do you want me to get a few doctors to take a look?" "No need," Emosure said faintly. Then, with Happy in his arms, he took a step forward and teleported to the corpse farm. This time, he did not leave behind the phantom of the giant dragon. After the dragon's shadow step reached the large success stage, Emosure could leave behind a giant dragon's shadow or not according to his wishes. Not leaving behind the image of the giant dragon would make it easier to hide their tracks. As for leaving behind the phantom dragon, it had other uses. The people in the base only regained their senses after Emosure left. Emosure had once again saved the base and resolved its crisis. This time, the enemy was very strong, ridiculously strong. In their eyes, he was like a god. In the end, in front of Emosure, he was still killed instantly. What was the upper limit of Emosure's abilities? However, they were already used to Emosure's strength. What shocked them even more was Happy. She was a girl who couldn't even speak normally and could only stay in the corpse farm to do some work that was looked down upon by others. She was actually a terrifying existence who would kill anyone she wanted to kill. This completely overturned their understanding of her. Although they didn't dare to say it out loud before, some people were dissatisfied with Happy in their hearts. Mr. Emo was so strong, but his woman was just an ordinary person and a mute girl. Wasn't Mr. Emo afraid that Happy would drag him down? In particular, some women were even more jealous of Happy. Why would Mr. Emo like a useless mute girl like her? But now, other than shock, people were also in awe of Happy. In the face of an unreasonable existence, you had to die when she wanted you to. How could they not be in awe? At the same time, they also admired Emosure's judgment. They finally knew why Emosure had been so loyal to Happy, an ordinary person, all these years. Mr. Mo was still the best. His judgment was so sharp. At that moment, Mo returned to the corpse farm with Happy in his arms. Mo carefully placed Happy on her bed. He covered her with a blanket. He pulled a chair for himself and sat by the bed, guarding Happy. At the same time, he flipped through the memories that he had just plundered. Soon, he saw the scene of Happy using the death ability. Mo couldn't help but be shocked. Was the ability of the Oracle so heaven-defying? Whoever she wanted to kill would have to die. It ignored all defenses and levels. When the Oracle's ability was activated, even if the person standing in front of her was the strongest existence in the Flaming Origin continent, Happy only needed to say the word death to turn him into ashes. Moreover, when the Oracle's ability was activated, she was in an absolute defense state. Any attack that landed on her body would have no effect at all. This was too much of a bug. Since the apocalypse, everything that had happened could be explained by science. However, the Oracle's ability was beyond Mo's understanding. However, he also knew that this was not a fantasy. It was because he couldn't understand it with his current knowledge. It was just like how the ancients couldn't understand modern mobile phone calls and video calls. In the eyes of the ancients, this was completely the work of the gods. At the same time, Mo also learned about the legend of the Oracle from the memories of one of the hunters. Legend had it that the Oracle of Heaven could destroy a star field with a single word. This ability was simply too terrifying. No wonder it was called the product of the Creator's mistake. At the same time, Mo finally understood why Happy didn't know how to speak. With such a bug-like ability, would he dare to let her speak casually? Half an hour later. On the teleportation platform of the first hunting island in the Flaming Origin continent. As a blue and white light appeared, a figure slowly condensed. This person was none other than the handsome young man, Shachi. He looked up and saw that this was the teleportation platform of the first hunting island. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The first hunting ground was too scary. A wild beast was too scary. The 2,500 mercenaries he brought were all annihilated except for himself. As for the other 2,500 mercenaries, needless to say, they were definitely wiped out as well. They even lost a cheetah mech. He was lucky to be able to keep his life. At the same time, he secretly swore that when he became a desolate hunter in the future, he would definitely go back and take revenge. Dismember that desolate beast and that fellow into 1,000 pieces. However, the most important thing now was that Bertha had been killed by him. Without this level 6 psychic, he, as a level 8 desolate hunter, could easily kill her father and avenge his parents. At the same time, he would take back control of the first hunting island. As long as he took control of the first hunting island, wouldn't he be able to control all the creatures in the first hunting ground? By then, it would be even easier to kill that wild beast and that guy. However, he never dreamed that Mo had already left something in his body. Chapter 227. When Shachi thought that he would soon be able to avenge his parents, the fear and joy of escaping from death completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by anger and hatred. He was like a lion going for revenge. His eyes began to turn bloodshot. He strode toward the office of the hunting ground owner, Belki. Along the way, there were many guards on the island. But they knew that Shachi was the son-in-law of the hunting ground owner. They were all trying to curry favor with him. How could they stop him? When Shachi arrived at the hunting ground owner's office, the hunting ground owner was not there. He asked the guard next to him and was told that the hunting ground owner had something to do and would be back soon. Shachi took a deep breath, took the red wine bottle on the table, and poured himself a full glass. Then, he gulped it down. It was not like drinking red wine at all. It was more like drinking cold water. He poured another large glass of red wine and drank it all in one gulp. Then he lay down on the sofa and played with the empty glass with the mechanical hand on his right. He seemed to be very relaxed. In fact, his eyes were fixed on the door. After a while, 2 figures came in quickly. They were the hunting ground owner and his wife, Belki and his wife. When the couple saw Shachi lying on the sofa, they quickly stepped forward and asked, Shachi, did you find them? Where's Bertha? Shachi suddenly sat up with a sinister smile on his face. Dead. What? The hunting ground owner's wife looked pale. Her legs were weak and her body was trembling. Belki frowned and stared at Shachi. What happened? Shachi sneered, your good son and good daughter are dead. Then he raised his head proudly and said, I killed them. Belki and his wife heard this and felt like they were struck by lightning. The woman's legs were weak and she collapsed to the ground. Belki took 2 steps back, opened his eyes wide, and kept shaking his head, no, no. They can't be dead. Shachi saw this and couldn't help laughing out loud, ha 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 ha, the pleasure of revenge in his heart made him crazy. Belki made him lose his family. He had long wanted him to taste the pain of losing his family. He had long wanted to see the desperate and sorrowful expression on his face after losing his family. Now, he finally saw it. Belki placed his hand on the iron desk and questioned with a pale face. Beast, what did you do to them? Shachi laughed as the corners of his mouth twitched nervously. What did I do? Kill them, tear them into pieces and feed them to the zombies. When the woman heard this, she screamed. His vision went dark, and he fainted. When Bayerchi heard this, his body and voice trembled. Why? 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 Shachi sneered. Because I am the son of the owner of the first hunting ground 20 years ago. Before the sound of his voice faded away, his genetic martial art instantly flashed. He immediately stabbed out. Poof! With a muffled sound, Belki's head was nailed to the wall. When the guards outside heard the commotion, they quickly kicked the door open and jumped in. However, when they saw that the hunting ground master was nailed to the wall by his son-in-law using a genetic weapon, their expressions changed drastically. Now that the hunting ground master was dead, there was no need for them to work for him anymore. Moreover, they were only level 1 or 2 hunters. How could they be a match for a level 8 hunter? Next, Shachi twisted the head of the hunting ground master's wife in front of all the guards. Still, none of the guards dared to make a sound. Shachi looked at the bodies of the couple and the entire first hunting island outside the window. He had made up his mind. Next, he would reorganize the forces on the first hunting island. There were more than 50,000 people on the first hunting island. After reorganizing these forces, he would add to the Sandstorm Hunter group. The Sandstorm Hunter group's strength would be greatly improved. Then, he would go to other hunting grounds to improve his strength. When he became a hunter, he would go to the first hunting ground again. Kill that wild beast, destroy that guy. Thinking of this, Shachi could not help but feel proud. He laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha, however, his voice came to an abrupt stop here. This was because an invisible shockwave had already spread out from his body. Almost instantly, it spread out to a radius of 100 kilometers. If one looked down from the sky, they would see a big blood-red circle spreading rapidly with the hunting ground master's office as the center. The Zero virus had broken out. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all living things were infected with the Zero virus at this moment. Whether it was animals, plants, or microbes. A very regular circle appeared in the center of the first hunting island, which was originally full of greenery. The whole circle was filled with blood-red color. At this moment, all the humans turned into zombies at an extremely fast speed. And all the zombies on the first hunting island had undergone a second mutation at this moment. They mutated into monsters that did not look like humans. Some grew 6 legs. Some grew 2 heads. Some had a bloody hole in their stomachs, and another head grew out of the bloody hole. It looked extremely horrifying and disgusting. And within a radius of 100 kilometers, the infected creatures would continue to spread out. They would bring the virus out of the infected area. And the scariest thing about the Zero virus was that it could be spread through the air. So, in just 2 days, the entire first hunting island had been completely infected. Fortunately, the surroundings of each hunting island were completely isolated by the sea. And there was also an air isolation system that covered the entire island. Basically, every hunting island had the same air isolation system. It was to prevent the virus in the hunting grounds from spreading to the flaming origin continent. At this point, the entire first hunting island had become a completely uninhabited area. The first hunting island was originally an inconspicuous place, and very few people came here. Now, it was all infected. So, at least in the short term, no one would disturb Earth. This was Emosher's plan. Of course, this plan could only be delayed for a while. One day, someone would come to the first hunting island again. There would be a day when someone would investigate Earth. But this day would definitely not come soon. Emosher, on the other hand, could take advantage of this time to improve his strength. With his current strength, if he used all his trump cards, he would be invincible below level 10 hunters. And when he became a hunter one day, he was confident that he would be able to fight a level 10 hunter even if he did not use the Azure Dragon avatar. Of course, Emosher did not immediately improve his strength at this time. He was still guarding Happy's bed. Before Happy woke up, he was still a little worried. While guarding Happy, Emosher checked in his mind. System, checking in for a special event. Chapter 228. System, sign in for a special event. Emosher said. Sign in successful. Sign in event, destroy the enemy from the flaming continent. Sign in reward, 1 overclocked particle gun, 1 cheetah mecha. Emosher was puzzled. This overclocked particle gun sounded very high-end. Could it be the technology of the flaming continent? He focused his attention on the overclocked particle gun in his backpack. Overclocked particle gun, also known as overclocked particle emitter. Technology that surpasses the flaming continent. It can emit overclocked particles that penetrate the energy shield of the mecha and cause damage to the mecha. Emosher was delighted. He took out the overclocked particle gun. It looked like a barrel. His entire arm could reach into this barrel. Inside the barrel, there was a handle. Emosher reached his right arm into the barrel and grabbed the handle. The next moment, the entire barrel began to eject components. Click, 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 there were more than a dozen soft sounds. The entire barrel had changed shape. It wrapped Emosher's right arm tightly. At the same time, a scope and a barrel popped out. The shape of the gun looked like a rifle. Most of it was black. But there were several streamlined fluorescent lights on the gun. There was no trigger on the gun. Emosher was puzzled. How could he shoot without a trigger? While he was puzzled, countless red rays were produced from the barrel. These rays could directly illuminate Emosher's right arm. Then, through the nerves on his right arm, they were directly connected to the neurons in his brain. Emosher's brain suddenly felt as if there was something extra. The next moment, he suddenly realized that this overclocked particle gun was actually controlled by his brainwaves. In other words, he could shoot with his consciousness. Damn, which superplane's technology is this? Emosher couldn't help but exclaim. According to the memories of the people he plundered, although the technology of the flaming continent was much more advanced than that of Earth. But there was no technology to control guns with consciousness. Emosher was still thinking about how to deal with the cheetah mecha. Now that he had the overclocked particle gun, this problem was solved. As for the cheetah mecha, Emosher glanced at it in his mind. On the surface, this cheetah mecha looked exactly the same as the cheetah mecha from the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. But in reality, the Sandstorm Mercenary Group's cheetah mechas were second-hand mechas retired from the military of the Flaming Land. On the other hand, Emosher's was a brand new mecha. However, when Emosher saw the mech's description, he felt a headache coming on. Just by knowing the computer technology on Earth, it was impossible to control it. He also needed to understand the soul's algorithm, adhesion codes, and other computer knowledge from the Flaming Continent. Of course, all of this information was contained in the manual of the mecha. However, Mo had never been interested in computers. It was too difficult for him to learn this knowledge. It seemed that he had to find a few people who were interested in this kind of thing, just like the Sandstorm mercenary group. While Mo was thinking, Happy's eyelids suddenly twitched. Mo was overjoyed and quickly put away the overclocked particle gun. After a moment, Happy opened his eyes. Her eyes had returned to normal. They were still those big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Happy's complexion also recovered a lot. When she saw Mo, her eyes immediately lit up, and her gaze kept trembling. Mo knew what she meant and said, "Happy, I'm fine." At the same time, a warm current surged in his heart. "How are you?" Mo asked Happy. There was a hint of confusion in Happy's eyes. She gestured, "Brother Mo, what happened to me?" Mo was shocked. "You don't remember?" Happy shook her head gently and gestured. "Remember what?" Mo frowned slightly. "Those people who came to our base to cause trouble." Happy still shook her head blankly. However, a contagious smile soon appeared on his face. She gestured. "They must have been dealt with by Brother Mo." Mo frowned slightly again. After asking a few more questions, he knew. After Happy woke up this time, she was still unable to speak. Moreover, she had no memory of this incident at all. Fortunately, other than this incident, she still remembered everything else. Only then did Mo's brows completely relax. This was good too. He wanted Happy to always remember happy things. And what happened this time was clearly a dark and terrifying memory to Happy. It was best if she did not remember. After that, Mo did not leave the base. Instead, he accompanied Happy for 3 days. He wanted to make sure that this incident did not have any negative effects on Happy. Fortunately, the matter this time only affected Happy physically. Her body was very weak. However, with Mo's recovery medicine, there was no need to worry about this at all. After taking it, she completely recovered 5 minutes later. 10 days later, 100 kilometers away from the Chilean base. One of Mo's clones finally saw the cheetah mecha. The cheetah mecha was killing some zombies and mutated beasts. Its head and body were constantly shooting energy rays in all directions. Any grass, wood, metal, or stone would only end up being pierced by these energy rays. And those zombies and mutated beasts, without exception, were directly cut in half at the waist by the energy rays on the mecha. Moreover, their wounds were directly burned, and there was no possibility of them recovering and reviving. A few level 10 super mutated zombies had originally planned to use traps to catch the cheetah mecha. However, it had infrared scanning, radar detection, heat sensing, and many other sensing technologies in its body, so it could easily see through the traps. All the zombies were extremely frightened. They did not understand why such a thing suddenly appeared here. They could not break through its energy shield at all. They could not dodge its energy rays. They could not avoid its various detection. Their speed was far inferior to this thing. They could not beat it even if they wanted to, and they could not escape even if they wanted to. In the end, these infected creatures were almost all killed by the cheetah mecha. It was also at this moment that a figure suddenly appeared 1,000 meters away from the cheetah mecha. This person was none other than Mo. At this moment, an overclocked particle gun had already been formed on his arm. It looked as if his entire right arm had turned into a long gun. It was directly aimed at the cheetah mecha. The cheetah mecha's heat detection had already detected Mo's arrival. But at this moment, it was killing the last few infected creatures. It did not pay attention to Mo at all. Mo's consciousness moved. Whoosh, a stream of bluish-white particles instantly shot out. When this stream of bluish-white particles arrived in front of the cheetah mecha, an energy shield instantly appeared on the cheetah mecha's body. Chapter 229. With a thought from Mo, the particle gun shot out a stream of blue and white particles. Whoosh, It crossed a kilometer in an instant and shot toward the cheetah mech. The cheetah mech also sensed the attack coming. A yellow energy shield quickly appeared around the mech. However, when the blue and white particles hit the energy shield, there was no reaction. It instantly passed through the energy shield. It was as if the energy shield didn't exist at all. The next moment, the particle stream hit the mech. In just an instant, the cheetah mech seemed to have been electrocuted. Sparks and lightning kept coming out of its body. The yellow energy shield around the mech quickly disappeared. Seeing this, Immortal quickly retracted the particle gun on his right arm. The next moment, the genetic weapon on his right arm formed. He instantly flew 100 meters into the air. The giant axe came down with a bang. Boom! A crack that was 100 meters long and 5 meters wide instantly appeared on the ground. In the center of the crack, the cheetah mech had already been cut into hundreds and thousands of pieces. Sparks kept coming out. This was the characteristic of the mechs of the Flaming Land. The reason why the mechs were so strong was because of the energy shield. With the energy shield, it could block any attack. And once the energy shield was broken, basically any hunter could destroy it with an energy beam from an energy weapon. However, this energy shield alone was enough to stop all the hunters. This was because with the current technology of the Flaming Dawn continent, there was no other way to break this energy barrier apart from a desolate hunter using brute force. And now, Immortal's particle gun was technology that surpassed the technology of the Flaming Land, so it could easily break the energy shield. At this moment, Immortal scanned with his dragon mind and found a fingernail-sized chip in the pile of debris. According to the memory he obtained, even if the mech was destroyed, the mech owner could still locate the chip. Immortal landed and picked up the chip. He gently rubbed his right index finger and finger. The chip suddenly broke into pieces. The cheetah mech was finally dealt with. Next were the spider drones. Each spider drone had a chip in it. So, he had to destroy all the spider drones and then destroy the chips in them. But the world was so big, who knew where those spider drones were flying to now? Moreover, there were quite a number of spider drones. Even with Immortal's abilities, who knew how long it would take for him to destroy all of them? Moreover, these spider drones also had energy shields. Even if others encountered it, they would not be able to destroy it. Only Immortal could do it himself. He pondered for a moment and decided not to dwell on it any longer. The voice in his mind said, "System, check in for a special event." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face sign-in successful. Sign-in event, destroy the cheetah mecha, sign-in reward, 1000 overclocked particle spider drones. He checked the rewards in his mind. Overclocked particle spider drone, upgraded version of the spider drone. It can emit a stream of overclocked particles to destroy the energy shields of other spider drones. It was true that whatever he lacked would come. He was just worrying about how to get rid of those spider drones when he received this reward. Then, the next step would be to find a few people who knew computers to operate these overclocked particle spider drones and the cheetah mecha. After returning to the base, Immortal called Guo Jutao over. He said, "I have a great use for selecting computer geniuses in the base." Guo Jutao was now the newly elected chief of the base. Immortal had saved the people of the base so many times, so he naturally would not disobey Immortal's words in the slightest. He immediately issued an order to search for computer geniuses in the base. Of course, there were only more than 100,000 people in the base. Moreover, most of these people were now engaged in manual labor. It was undoubtedly difficult to find one or two computer geniuses among them. Immortal also ordered the level 10 psychokinesis in all the bases in the world to search for computer geniuses in their respective bases. These level 10 psychokinesis now had a certain amount of weight in their respective bases. After all, they were the strongest group of people in the base. In just 3 days, more than a dozen bases had selected people who were talented in computer science. After Immortal read the information of these people, he frowned slightly. Many of these people were not young anymore. There was even a person in his 70s who was about to die. For the remaining young people, Mo Sure made dozens of copies of the books that the system had given him when he rewarded the mecha. He let them study by themselves. As geniuses, their ability to self-study should be very strong. As for Mo Sure himself, he took advantage of this time to continue controlling the sea dragon clone to devour at the bottom of the sea. Now he was devouring these super mutant beasts at the bottom of the sea to accumulate energy for the sea dragon clone. When he broke through, the sea dragon clone would be able to break through immediately. Secondly, he was looking for an opportunity to break through. He planned to wait for the sea dragon clone to finish devouring the remaining level 10 super mutant beasts in the trenches before heading to Bermuda. More than a month later, Mo Sure learned about the self-study of those geniuses. The results disappointed him. All the geniuses looked at these books as if they were reading heavenly books. Even some of the geniuses who claimed to be able to easily grasp the knowledge in any computer book they read. They were also at a loss in front of the books Mo Sure gave them. Some of the computer knowledge in the books was simply beyond their understanding. Some of the knowledge even completely subverted what they had learned. It was the complete opposite of what they had learned. How could they study by themselves? Mo Sure could only smile bitterly in his heart. Was it really impossible to find a computer genius among the millions of people left in the world? It was also at this time that in several bases around the world, people had been killed by the spider drones. Those spider drones were like hunters, constantly hunting down the people in these bases. People used almost all kinds of methods to deal with them. However, whether it was physical attacks or firearms attacks, they had no effect on these spider drones. Their bodies could produce a kind of earthy yellow energy shield. Even rockets could not penetrate this energy shield. Their bodies were only the size of a fist. It was difficult to find them if they were hidden. Therefore, for a time, these spider drones became a nightmare for those bases. 2 days later, in the evening, Mo Sure controlled the sea dragon clone to devour a level 10 super mutant beast in a trench. While he was resting, a great hunter cautiously approached the corpse farm. After finding Mo Sure, he said respectfully, "Mr. Mo, 2 monks are looking for you." Chapter 230. While Mo Sure was resting, someone came to report that 2 monks wanted to see him. In the apocalypse, there weren't many monks. Mo Sure had only seen 2 monks since he came to this world. He was slightly puzzled. Why were these 2 monks looking for him? "Invite them in," Mo Sure said. More than 10 minutes later, the 2 monks, one old and one young, entered the corpse farm. The old monk was in his 60s or 70s, while the young monk was in his 20s. When the old monk saw Mo Sure, he put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. "Amitabha. How have you been, benefactor Mo?" The young monk also bowed. "Amitabha." He added in his heart, "Good job." Mo Sure looked at the 2 monks, one old and one young. Both of their clothes were torn in many places. Other than their faces, there was almost no clean place on their bodies. It was obvious that they were travelers. Mo Sure asked in astonishment, "You too, walked over from base C2?" The young monk looked at his master with some resentment and said, "We sneaked out of base C2. Naturally, no one sent us a helicopter." Mo Sure looked at the 2 of them again. Both of them were ordinary people, but they actually left base C2. They walked more than 1,000 kilometers in the wilderness and came to base C1. Although Mo Sure's clone had basically cleaned up most of the infected creatures in Huaxia. But this old and young man, as ordinary people, actually walked more than 1,000 kilometers to base C2. This was really shocking. Especially considering that this old monk was already in his 60s or 70s, it was even more surprising. Mo Sure asked, "You two came to see me because the old monk had walked too much, his body looked very weak." The young monk spoke on his behalf. The young monk scratched his bald head and said, "Benefactor Mo, aren't you looking for a computer genius? My master thought that I played all kinds of game consoles very well, so he insisted on recommending me. But I've never touched any computer. The chief of the base passed me over. In the end, my master said that they didn't know what was good for them and insisted on sending me to you personally. I really have to hand it to him. My master is just a bag of old bones. How can he be so spirited? Besides, being good at gaming and being a computer genius aren't even close. The old monk coughed twice and glared at the little monk. Then, he took the water from Happy and drank a mouthful. That's the general idea. Then, he cast a glance at Happy before he spoke to Mo. Sure. Big brother Mo, is this sister-in-law? So beautiful. If I can marry such a beautiful wife one day. The old monk looked at the little monk helplessly and said, don't worry. Profound reflection. The little monk stuck out his tongue and giggled. Umitba, color is emptiness. As he spoke, he hurriedly took the cup of water and drained it in one gulp. Then, he handed the cup to Happy. Sister-in-law, please give me another cup. The old monk said apologetically. Benefactor Mo, Jian Xian lacks discipline. However, he can be considered a genius in any game. At this time, he is at the mercy of others. Mr. Mo, if you don't mind, please take him in. Mo sure looked at the little monk, who was taking the second cup of water from Happy and gulping it down. He nodded. All right, let him try. Anyway, they couldn't find a suitable person now. The old man and the young man had walked thousands of miles to give them a chance. Thinking of this, Mo sure asked someone to copy a set of computer books he had obtained from the system. Take a look. I'll look for you in 3 days. Mo sure said lightly. Seeing this, the old monk immediately put his palms together and said, Umitba. The little monk added in a low voice, that's good. He said it in an extremely low voice, thinking that no one could hear it except for himself. However, Mo sure took another look at the little monk. The little monk's heart couldn't help but thump. Did he hear it? For the next few days, Mo sure didn't bother with the little monk. He controlled the sea dragon clone and swam towards Bermuda in the Atlantic Ocean. 3 days later, he was not far from Bermuda. It was on this day that he went to the residence of the 2 monks during his rest time. When the old monk saw Mo sure, he stood up to welcome him. He said to Mo sure, Benefactor Mo is here. Mo sure looked around the room and didn't see the little monk. He probed with his dragon senses and found that the little monk was reading in the bedroom. The old monk called the little monk out. When the little monk saw Mo sure, his eyes lit up and he said, Brother Mo, can you find me a computer? I've been reading these books for the past 2 days without being able to practice. My hands have been itching for a long time. I wanted to look for you, but my master kept stopping me and insisted that I finish reading the 3 books. The old monk explained with a smile, you haven't even built a good foundation, yet you want to practice. You're like a tree without roots that can't last long. Seeing this, Mo sure's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this little monk was really a genius in this area? He asked the little monk, how many books have you read now? The little monk replied, I've read 2. I'm still reading the last one. Mo sure asked, can you understand them? The little monk shook his head. I can only understand 20%. But there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be learned through practice. If I had a computer. Mo sure was secretly surprised when he heard this. There were so many computer experts from so many bases around the world, but none of them could understand it after so many days. This little monk had never touched a computer before, but he could understand 20% in just 3 days. If he wasn't a genius, then what was? But he still had to verify it. Guo Jutao, who accompanied him, thought that the little monk was talking nonsense. But he could also see that these 2 monks seemed to have some relationship with Mo sure. He immediately said, I'll get someone to find a computer. In the apocalypse, resources such as computers in the bases were prioritized for the laboratory. Ordinary people had never even seen a computer, let alone use one. Mo sure waved his hand and said, no need. As he said this, he moved his mind. From his backpack, he took out something that looked like a belt about 10 centimeters wide. He handed it to the little monk and said, "Tie it to your waist." Everyone was a little confused. Weren't they talking about computers? Why did he suddenly take out a belt? Although the little monk didn't know why, he still tied it to his waist. Mosher pointed to a button on the belt. He said, "Press it." The little monk immediately pressed it. The next moment, 2 light green lights were projected in front of the belt. Upon closer inspection, these weren't just 2 simple beams of light. In one light, something like a computer keyboard appeared. In the other light, a virtual screen appeared.